Here for our Bothell City Council for April 21st, if you all join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We are almost a full council this evening. Councilmember Lamb is absent and excused this evening. Next item on our agenda is the meeting agenda approval. Any changes to tonight's meeting? Councilmember Sandberg?
I'd like to add 10 minutes to Agenda Bill 15048, which is the discussion of the Transportation Benefit District.
Okay, so 25 minutes total. Great. Anyone else? How about projected agenda? Councilmember Agnew.
I'd like to put on the projected agenda that we look at putting the Wayneta 100th Street corridor in on the concurrency list. It seems to be the only north-south road that we have coming out of Kirkland. It seems to be getting used much more, and I'd like staff to take a look at that and come up with some conclusions on how we can avoid a problem.
Anybody else want to comment on that? No? Councilmember Sandberg? And then Deputy Mayor Spivey?
I would concur with that. I think that Councilmember Agnew is referring to an April 20th memo that we received from the Public Works Department, so that was the thing that I wanted to add to the projected agenda. And maybe take a little bit broader look and see if there are other corridors that should be added to the concurrency list, because there are just, I think it's 7. There are just 7 corridors currently listed, and I think that there are many people throughout the city who feel that they experience traffic problems in their area. So I think a broader discussion about that would be useful.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
I was just curious if you had a specific date in mind or just have staff find a spot for it.
I was going to ask staff to just find a spot for it.
Great, thank you.
Great. So it looks like we're going to have that back. We'll leave it to staff when that may come back. Other items on the projected agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next, which is special presentations. We have the honor tonight to have the Planning Commission with us, and I believe the full body is here if I'm recognizing all the faces. But we are going to be honoring Pat Gastineau, who served for several years. So I have a little history here that I like to read, and then have the opportunity to present a plaque that we have for you. So Pat served on the Planning Commission for 12 years from 2003 until March of this year. During that time, he participated in several major land use decisions the city has made, including the downtown plan and regulations, 2 major plan and code updates, a complete overhaul of the city's critical area regulations, and more than 50 other plan and code amendments. Pat has served on as a commission chair as well as secretary, and his service has been truly helped shape the city. So, Pat, I've gotten to know you for several years, and I know many of the council has up here as well. You certainly are leaving your time in the city and the service on the Planning Commission with good honor, and thank you so much for all that you've done for the city that sometimes goes unrecognized, but we certainly recognize it today. So, I don't know if any others may want to make comment. Councilmember Sandberg?
Well, I had the privilege and the pleasure with serving with Patrick for many years on the Planning Commission, and I can tell you that he brought a very valued perspective, and I always found him to be hardworking and easy to collaborate with. And I haven't seen him in a while, and it reminds me that, you know, when you see the president's picture, like before and after, before they take office and after they leave, I'm wondering if I fit that bill along with Patrick, because we look a lot different than when we started on Planning Commission together. So I hope you enjoy your time away from Planning Commission, and I appreciate all of your service.
Great. Good. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. Pat, thank you so much for your service. One of the things I hear time and time again about your time on Planning Commission was your leadership. whether no matter what your role on Planning Commission was, that you were always a leader there, provided guidance to new members on the Planning Commission. That was very highly looked upon favorably, and those members respect you, both current and past. And so you will be missed for your leadership and the guidance that you've provided to all the people that have come during your tenure to the Planning Commission. I know you'll be missed for your leadership from a council perspective and the guidance that you provided to the Planning Commission. So thank you for your time, and enjoy your time away from the Planning Commission.
Great, thank you. So I would love if Blake Stedman, Eric Clark, Mike Stahl, Steve Booth, and Pat Gastineau, David Vliet, I see in back. If you all could come up here, we'll take a picture together with the plat.
Thank you, Pat.
Good job, appreciate it.
Anybody got a camera? Anybody want to take a picture?
Take a picture?
If there's anything you want to say in parting, you certainly can do that. Or okay, see you later. I love it. That's the face of freedom right there. Next on our agenda this evening, we do have a special presentation, a community transit update for Swift Bus Rapid Transit. We're joined this evening by Todd Morrow, the Chief of Strategic Communications. Todd, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's great to be with you again. Community Transit is here to share some good news with all of you, and we're here to brief you on our plans to add new and better service here in Bothell. And this transit service will not only make it easier for many people, your residents, to ride the bus, but it will also provide an opportunity in some cases for a one-seat ride or easy connections for those wanting to travel to the Boeing Painfield Manufacturing Center, as well as to jobs here in Bothell. This is our next phase of implementing bus rapid transit in Snohomish County, and it will help our employers who want to have better transportation options for their employees. And so here to brief you actually is June Duvall. She's Community Transit's manager of strategic planning and grants, and we hired June away from Las Vegas, where she implemented bus rapid transit for them several years ago and then started the work here in Snohomish County. So now I'm going to turn it over to June. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. June, welcome.
See if I remember how they told me to do this. Uh-oh.
Sorry. Stops. There you go.
Good evening. I am here to tell you about the next phase of Swift Bus Rapid Transit. But before I talk about Swift number 2, I thought I'd better tell you a little bit about Swift number 1 so that you can see what it is that we implemented as Bus Rapid Transit. Swift Bus Rapid Transit started on November 29th, 2009, so we've been running for a little over 5 years. Swift was the first bus rapid transit in the state of Washington. And in developing BRT, we wanted to follow as closely as possible the characteristics of bus rapid transit as identified by the Federal Transit Administration. One of our overarching goals for BRT was what we called 10-second dwell times. So when a bus stopped at a station, it would be there approximately 10 seconds before it continued on again. And so we designed for that goal. So the first Swift, as I said, has been running a little over 5 years on Highway 99 from Everett Station in the north along Highway 99 all the way down to the Aurora Village Transit Center just south of the King County line. The line is 16.7 miles long, and at the time it was implemented, it was the longest arterial running bus rapid transit in the United States. We have 14 station pairs, so the stations are approximately a mile apart. And then there's transit priority infrastructure such as BAT lanes, the right-hand lane for buses and right-hand turn movements, and transit signal priority so that the buses get through the intersections a little easier. Our buses look very unique. The Swift vehicles, again, were designed in order to help accommodate that 10-second dwell time. So we have 3 wide doors for boarding and exiting. We have onboard bike racks, so a customer with a bike simply wheels their bike into the vehicle. And we have what's called passive restraint for wheelchairs. It's a padded board so that the wheelchair users can wheel into the bus and back up against this board, put on the brakes to their wheelchair. They don't require to be tied down at all. It makes it much simpler for them to board and deboard the bus, and it also takes less time. Approximately 29 to 30 seconds for a wheelchair user to board or deboard our Swift buses. Our stations are very unique, and they are identical at every location. So this is exactly what a Swift station looks like on every location. You can see there's a raised curb, so we have about a 10-inch curb at the bottom. Again, it makes it easier for people to very quickly board the bus. We have what are called welcome mats. You can see the black mats at the station edge. That does 2 things. It shows the driver exactly where to line up his bus so that the doors are at the welcome mats. It also tells the customer exactly where the doors are going to be so that when a bus pulls up, the customers aren't kind of chasing the door to board. They know where the door is going to be. We have off-board fare collection, so you might be able to see there's 2 ticket vending machines here. And for our ticket vending machines, we actually used a repurposed Seattle parking meter. So the same parking meters that you would see in Seattle, we've used as ticket vending machines at our Swift stations. We also have 2 Orca readers, one on either side, so a customer walking up in either direction would be able to tap their Orca card. And we have real-time passenger information, that real-time signage at the top there. That tells the customer as they walk up to a Swift station exactly how far away the next bus is, whether it be 5 minutes away, 3 minutes away. It has a countdown all the way to when the bus is due. The service characteristics of BRT are fast, frequent, bidirectional service. So our service runs all day long, bidirectional service at 12-minute frequencies from 5 a.m. till 7 p.m. and then 20 minutes in the evenings and weekends. We have compulsory stops at all stations. So our stations are a mile apart, but every Swift bus stops at every station. The customer on board does not have to request a stop. The bus will stop automatically. This helps us space out our buses. It also helps the customers have a sense of comfort with new users who don't really know how to use the bus. They don't have to worry about it. The bus will stop at every station. We have precision docking with rub rails so that the buses are pulling in within 4 inches of the curb, again, to make it a very easy step into and out of the bus. And we are consistently meeting and exceeding those 10-second dwell times. So Swift ridership. Swift very quickly became our fastest growing ridership in the community transit system. This chart shows the 2014 boardings, and the line at the extreme left that is almost 3 times as high as any of our other routes is our Swift ridership. We're carrying about 5,500 passengers per day right now on Highway 99. Prior to Swift starting up, the ridership on Highway 99 between ourselves and Everett Transit was about 7,800 passengers per day on that corridor. Now it's a little over 10,000. So even through the recession and our service cuts and all of the challenges that we faced, ridership on this corridor continued to grow. So we implemented Swift in 2009, and then in 2011, Community Transit adopted a long-range transit plan for the next 20 years to really identify where our growth would be. We adopted a vision of transit emphasis corridors that you can see here on this map, and the blue lines that are shown on the map are our vision for a network of Swift bus rapid transit. Swift 2 is now the next step in building that network. So beginning in 2013, we started a corridor study to look at the feasibility of a bus rapid transit line. We wanted to see if the corridor that we had identified was ready, what the scope and cost would be, and also to prepare ourselves for an FTA Small Starts grant process. The preferred alignment you can see here for the second line of SWIFT. If I'm looking at the north, it starts at a new transit center across the street from the Boeing facility, 12.5 miles. It would use Airport Road 128th to 527, the Bothell Everett Highway, and then south along 527 to the Canyon Park Park and Ride. It's 12.5 miles long. There would be 15 station pairs, and it crosses our existing SWIFT on Highway 99 to start to begin to build that network of SWIFT transit. So I referenced a new transit center. At the northern end, there needs to be a place for the line to turn around, the buses to recover and start back the other direction. This piece of property, you can see, is directly across the street from the Boeing plant. So you can see the administration building directly across the street, that vacant piece of land. That is the land that we have identified for a new transit center that will anchor the SWIFT line, but will also be a transit center for all of the routes that currently serve Boeing to be able to use. Currently, we have community transit routes, Everett transit routes, and King County Metro that provide service to the Boeing Everett facility. And we envision a facility where all of those routes could come together, and a private shuttle by Boeing or others could be used to shuttle people on-site the property. The other major capital improvement that this route needs is a way to get across I-5 on 128th. It's highly congested. We have a lot of buses that go through here now, and on average our buses take about 7 minutes just to cross through this interchange. So the red lines that you see here are a series of very strategically placed BAT lanes, bus access lanes, to give the buses a way to get through the intersection, to jump through the queues. It also has the advantage of helping general purpose traffic that is looking, those westbound traffic that is looking to go north on I-5. This is also a lane that they can use to get to I-5 quicker, and it will help move all the traffic in through this interchange. So the operating forecast is it's a 12-mile route. We would run at 10-minute frequencies, bidirectional throughout the day with 20 minutes in evenings and weekends. The ridership forecast is about 3,300 passengers per day by the end of the first year. And our annual operating expense would be between $7 and $8 million. The capital elements of the project are the 30 stations, the 15 station pairs, the new Northern Transit Center, the I-5 interchange improvements. Transit signal priority throughout the corridor is a separate project that is being pursued by Snohomish County and WashDOT as partners. They were able to obtain a congestion mitigation air quality grant to put in adaptive signal control and transit signal priority for the SWIFT line. So that's another project that is coming to our project to help support the service. We would also be putting in some transit queue jumps and intersection improvements at specific intersections, and buy 12 new vehicles for the service, for a total cost of about $42 to $48 million. Where we are right now, we have been approved by the Federal Transit Administration to begin project development. We started that in December. So we are working on the design, the engineering, the environmental phase, and preparing ourselves for an FTA Small Starts grant. We will begin our public outreach in the corridor in June with a series of public meetings. We're working on partnerships with our local jurisdictions and WashDOT. We are also pursuing a state regional mobility grant that is in the current operating budget to fund the Seaway Transit Center, the new transit center at the north. And we are looking for a local option to sustain our ongoing operations for the service. If all goes well, our goal is to have this service up and running within 4 years. So that's a very brief overview of the entire line, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, June. Does anybody have questions? Councilmember Sandberg.
Hi, thank you very much for your presentation. I'm excited to hear that Bothell is going to be a part of this new phase 2, so that's great news. Can you tell me how the bus turnarounds will work at the southern terminus, which is the Canyon Park Park and Ride. And do you envision adding any capacity at that Park and Ride?
We don't at this time. We're not looking at adding capacity. We would use, if you're familiar with the current Canyon Park, as the bus approaches on the south side, there is motorcycle parking and a operator restroom. We would look at putting the new Swift station in along there and shaving the radius to make it easier for other buses to pass by the Swift bus. For mostly, we'll be using that operationally, that there'd be very little layover at that south end, so the Swift buses wouldn't be there as long. They'd be there long enough to kind of change the head sign on the bus and start back up north, but most of the operational recovery and layover would be done at the new transit center at the north.
And then, is there any plans to extend that that line even further south along 527?
Absolutely. On the map I showed you of the transit emphasis corridors, I know it was very small and hard to see. We do envision this line coming all the way down here to Bothell City Center. But what we do need first is the infrastructure that would support bus rapid transit levels of service. And currently there's a section of 527 south of, I think it was 242nd, that is only a 2-lane street. At such time as that ever gets widened and would support BRT levels of service, we would look at extending this line all the way down.
Okay, great, thanks.
Other questions?
Great, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Councilmember Sandberg kind of got to my question. I think it'd be great to have this go all the way down to, and it looks like the map that was here in our packet goes all the way to Utah Bothell.
Correct.
And so that being said, I was wondering if there was any way to help those students get down there was to hop onto the 405 to Utah Bothell and then make the turnaround there until such time that we got the 527 corridor up to speed for you.
At the moment, I can't really talk to what future services we would provide, because while we're adding service in June, we are kind of at the top of our authority now. We're looking at additional authority in order to run this service and additional services. It's quite possible that extending that service could be looked at. I just don't know what those exact services would look like.
And the 105 and 106, 2 of our bus routes already do serve those facilities and would connect very easily with the Canyon Park Transit Center. So it would be an easy, you just have to change buses.
A quick change.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you.
Great. Others? Councilmember Graham?
So I was just curious, the wheelchair restraints that are in the new buses, are old buses, can you retrofit those? Because I've seen it's a tough deal for people that are in wheelchairs to get secured in a bus.
It is one of the most popular features of our Swift service, and the biggest thing we heard from customers was, how soon can you get this on the rest of your buses? So since 2009, when the Swift service started up, every bus order we've had, that is now a standard feature for community transit buses. I believe we have 42 of our regular buses that now have passive restraint, and all future orders will be made with passive restraint.
Awesome. That'd be great. So I live in King County, so I pay what's it called? A transportation benefit district fee, or not? That's what we're talking about tonight.
Charge,
What's it called?
the congestion reduction charge you used to pay.
Yeah.
Well, there's one on our bill, our tabs.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that-
I think that did end. It sunsetted. Yeah.
I paid it this year. So what happens in Snohomish County? Is there similar?
No, and so that June alluded to this local option. So we're working in the state legislature right now to get the authority to go to our voters in Snohomish County and ask them if they want to increase the revenue that does come to our agency for those transit services. And that there's the new transportation revenue package that's in front of the legislature right now includes that local option in it. And if it passes, then our board of directors would have to decide whether or not to put that before a vote of the people. and then the voters would end up approving that if they chose to.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you both for coming this evening. Appreciate the presentation, the information for us and the public.
Thank you.
Great. Have a good night. I'm going to slide something into our agenda. Bill Evans asked to speak quickly on an item.
Just quickly, I wanted to make, the RFA Planning Committee is scheduled to meet on March 7th, or May 7th, and I got a call from one of the Planning Committee members today who wanted to know if we were going to have any information to present at that meeting. I told him it was scheduled again for our agenda on May 5th, so I wasn't sure that we would be ready to present anything on May 7th. So anyway, I will contact the chairman of the planning committee and just say, I don't think we're going to have anything for the May 7th meeting. They're kind of waiting for the city to come back with our input from look at our current operations and things. So at this point, there's a chance that May 7th meeting will be canceled, and the next meeting would be May 21st. So that will be posted on our website, but I just wanted to give the public a heads up that the May 7th meeting may be canceled, but that will be posted on our website once a final decision is made.
Great. Thank you, Bill. Next item on the agenda is our visitor section. This is a time for visitors and citizens to address council for a 3-minute period of time. I have 2 sign-up sheets currently, so if you haven't filled one out already, maybe you can take the opportunity to do so. We have them at the table in the back outside the door. So first on the sign-up sheet is David Bain, and we already have your address for the record. David? Seems to be an advertisement for a really high-resolution phone.
Fortunately, I left the brand name off the screen, so the advertiser or the phone company won't get any benefits. I'm here to talk about the Wayne Golf Course. And when talking about real estate, there's the expression location, location, location. And that's very important in the case of the value of this area to the public. The back 9 provides contiguity with Blythe Park. It also provides a wide spot next to the river, and it also has an existing creek running into it. The front 9 also provides a wide spot in the river and connects to the Burt-Gilman Trail. So those features are some of the important parts of its location. The Sammamish River, before the ship canal was brought in, looked something like this. The lake was 8 to 9 feet higher back then and extended almost all the way to where the golf course is now. The river was 4 to 5 miles longer, and the main thing to note is that it was surrounded by wetlands. And Chinook salmon were plentiful back then. Kokanee, which is another kind of salmon, also known as redfish, were very common. And we had between 1,000 and 2,000 southern resident killer whales living along the coast. Today, those wetlands have been dried out as a result of lowering the river. It's been straightened, shortened, and reduced to a single channel. Central Puget Sound Chinook are now a threatened species. Kokanee are being considered for endangered species listing, and the killer whales are down to just 81 individuals and are considered an endangered species. Hopefully it'll figure out the focus again. Okay. What we can do about it, we could purchase the Wayne Golf Course and convert the lowlands to wetlands optimized for salmon and add channels and bends to the river. We plant native vegetation to provide food and shade. We could build an interpretive center to explain why restoration is needed and teach people how they can improve the health of Puget Sound. And we can convert the highlands to a park optimized for people. This will accomplish varying the flow rate in the river, so when we have a flood, fish have low flow rate places to hide out. In the summer, when the flow is very low, they can move closer to the mainstream. It'll help cool the river both through greater surface area to exchange with groundwater and from the shade.
David, if you could just take 30 more seconds. The clerk didn't set the clock, but you've been at 4 minutes now.
Okay. It's like to significantly increase the wetland area. It would remove toxic chemicals and sediment from the river, significantly improve Chinook salmon, kokanee, and killer whale survival, and increase awareness of best practices. It would provide a place for the community to work together. Based on what we had at UW Bothell, it could easily bring in $10 to $20 million in federal and state funding for restoration work, and the Interpretive Center could provide permanent jobs.
Thank you, David. That is your time.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So if you could just set that back, so
Oops.
somehow zoom it back, the magic you did just before it. Not your screen, just back. There you go. Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you, David.
Thanks.
Next on the sign-up sheet is Sandy Gwynn. Ms. Gwynn.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to be talking about the RFA. At the next council meeting, staff will provide information that shows the cost to citizens if we do not join an RFA. I am respectfully requesting that staff also provide information that shows the cost to citizens if we join an RFA. Example, fees that the city currently receives for fire services that would now go to the RFA. Another example is the January 15th, 2015 memo from the city manager to the RFA consultant, stating that taxpayers who live outside of Bothell are anticipated to enjoy a significant reduction in their tax burden, which is the direct result of Bothell's participation in tax base. The memo further discusses the request for Bothell to contribute an additional $1.5 million per year to the RFA on top of the taxes already being paid by the Bothell taxpayers as part of an RFA. Based on the city's 7-year analysis, the savings generated by Bothell's participation in an RFA will exceed $5 million and will further exceed the initial reserve contributions by other jurisdictions in the near future, example 9 to 10 years. Another example, it's been discussed at the RFA committee meetings that there are services the RFA will provide, and there are other services that will not be provided unless the individual district or city would like to pay extra for these services. An example that was discussed is non-life-threatening transport. I'd like to know what an estimated cost to the city for having the RFA provide a non-life-threatening transport. And has the city or the RFA committee performed an analysis of the improvement to service if discretionary transports are not performed? And if not, will the city? Another example are comparables. 80% of a general fund is personnel cost. Have you reviewed other agencies that have formed an RFA, what the personnel costs were as an individual agency, and what the costs are 5 years later? And another example was in the report, costs for support functions, including IT, human resources, finance, and legal. If Bothell became part of an RFA, these support functions would no longer be provided by the City of Bothell, but by support staff contained with the RFA. The city would have to absorb this cost or reduce the staffing in those support activities, or the RFA would also contract for these services, with Bothell being a possible vendor. Thank you.
Great, thank you. That ends our sign-up sheets. Do we have potentially more that were filled out in the back? Great. Mr. Sears, if you want to bring that forward. You can just hand it to the clerk.
My name's Jesse Sears. I'm here to speak for One Bothell about the Waynes Golf Course. When we started talking to this council in January, we understood that there was no money and no ability to acquire these lands for the citizens of Bothell. During this time period, One Bothell activated, we found ways of being able to work with models that have worked in this community before. We followed the North Creek model. In fact, we have David Bain working with us right now on the board for One Bothell. During that time, too, we were in the process of adopting a lot of their bylaws into our 501c3 that we're currently working on. When we first started, we were working towards making this into parkland or recreational land, or possibly working it into saving it as a golf course. But we realized that this land is so much more as a regional asset through the resources or the research that we've done. This area is the centerpiece for this waterway. Anything that happens in this lower section of the Snohomish River drastically affects the waterway throughout this entire area. And more importantly, the endangered species that are affected by what happens to this land are extremely important to not only the citizens of Bothell, but to the surrounding area. We have an opportunity right now to do a great thing to be able to preserve this land. As One Bothell grew from this and started growing towards the mission that we currently have, as of this time, we have over 2,000 people that have taken our online position to want to save this land. This isn't just a neighborhood issue. It's not just a Bothell issue. This is a regional issue that people are very excited about seeing the beauty of this area saved. The public has spoken and wanted to save this land, and One Bothell has worked very hard to gather groups and partners to be able to achieve this. Currently, we're working tightly with the state, King County, WIRA 8, the Snow King Watershed, the Orca Agency, the Orca Network, and most recently Forterra and the landowners of the Wayne Golf Course to be able to save this land. Tonight, One Bothell is excited to announce that we have acquisition partners and funding partners ready to work with us to save this land, to save the Wayne land, for perpetuity for the citizens of this area. And these partners are Forterra, King County, and the state. Tonight, we humbly ask this dais, or the council, to be able to pass a motion, or to adopt a motion tonight to authorize the preliminary discussions of the city with Forterra about their role in saving Wayne land. So what we're asking for is the city to be able to sit down at the table to work with Forterra and to be able to come up with a way of funding both these lands. They're ready to go. We're hoping that we can work together with them with that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Do we have other sign-ups this evening?
I have a question.
Councilmember Sandberg has a question for you.
Mr. Sears.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Sears, would you entertain a question?
Absolutely.
So can you just repeat, you said you would like the council to adopt an action or a measure?
Yeah, I'd like to adopt a motion tonight, or pass a motion tonight, to be able to have the city work and enter into preliminary discussions with Forterra about their role in acquiring Wayne land.
Okay. And then I have a question for the city attorney. Is that something that we can do tonight?
With council, if council wants to add that to the agenda and take it up, as then they can. You've passed the point in the meeting where you normally would add things to the agenda, though. So council, it's council's meeting. So council, as a majority, can change the process, and this would be a change of the process.
Well, then I would respectfully ask the mayor if we could have a change in process and add a discussion of this motion to have the city enter into a preliminary discussion with Forterra, add that to the end of the meeting agenda tonight.
So as this is an item that I've recused myself on for the time being, I'm going to turn the rest of this conversation over to our deputy mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. So what we're asking is to essentially suspend our rules and add something to the end of the meeting. We can do that. I feel a little for staff in that a lot of times we prefer to give them time to be able to put a package together and present an agenda bill to us. City manager, city attorney, do you feel that you need some time before putting something together and doing a little background homework before passing a motion tonight, or?
Well, I've held preliminary discussions with Forterra already in connection with the Wayne's Golf Course. So it's a matter of what objectives that council has or you believe can be achieved by further discussions with this group. As my understanding is, they may in fact be able to loan a certain amount of money to the city, but I think the key is it's a loan. And so the ultimate question for the city council will be a policy question, that is, where will the money come from to purchase any part of the Wayne Golf Course? As you know, the offer that we extended was rejected, was fully contingent upon the city receiving grants over the next year. None of those grants have been achieved to date. There is $300,000 in the state capital budget. We have, the city has a request of $1.2 million in King County Conservation Futures. Bothell 1 has the same request in for the back nine. None of that has been awarded yet. So we're still really at the same point we were several weeks ago when we discussed this matter and presented our offer. I can certainly have more discussions with Forterra, but I think it's important that we understand sort of the reality of the situation, that we're still looking at a significant capital fundraising request in order for the city to purchase the land.
Okay.
So to the extent that that helps council, I'm certainly glad to have more discussions with Forterra, but that's what I know to date based on my discussions I've held with them.
All right. Councilmember Evans.
Well, Jesse, thank you for your comments and a great idea. I personally don't feel we need an official motion to do that. I mean, I understand you're looking for the support, and we certainly support the effort. But I guess my question to the city manager is, this was the first I'd heard that he's had meetings with Forterra, so that's good to know that at least that dialogue has been opened, and that I guess my question to the city attorney or to the city manager is, is there a reason to discuss more with them at this point, or do you have a general outline of what their position is? Apparently they have money that they're willing to loan us on a repayment. I guess I'm trying to determine what we're going to, if an additional meeting would help, the city would provide additional information with the city manager. Is there more to be gained there in your mind?
There may be, and again, these are just very preliminary discussions, and they were related to the time that the city was submitting its offer for the front nine, and then whether or not Forterra would be capable of providing earnest money that then would be paid back by the city at some point in time if grant funds were received. And so certainly if there's additional capital funds that can be raised by Forterra, again, I believe it would be on a loan basis. I'd be glad to have those discussions with them to see if we can find a way to at least provide the funds. But I think it's important for us to recognize that it's likely going to be a loan. It's not going to be a grant. I don't know that they've ever granted funds to an agency. At least the preliminary discussions I've held with them were based on a loan basis. So it still gets back to the same capital fundraising requests that are challenge that we've had for the last several months. Well, but I'm glad to meet with them some more and provide more information to council if that's your desire.
Right, and I'm not. I don't know that we. If there's an opportunity here to continue the dialogue and keep things moving along, I'm all for that. I don't know that we need an official motion. I don't know what the benefit of it would be if staff can go ahead and just keep that process moving. If there's any written documentation, Jesse, that you folks have that you could pass on to the city manager, or if they have that they could bring to us, but I'm all for continuing the discussion with them. Let's talk if there's more we can do.
Yeah, from our understanding, what's going on right now is Forterra has been working very closely with King County as far as moving forward with this, and they really want the city to come take a seat at that table to be able to move forward as a unified force to be able to acquire this land. And that takes a motion for them to be able to have that ability to work with the city.
Who requires a motion?
Well, no, I shouldn't say that. I'm speaking out of turn here. It's not a motion. They just want the ability to work with the city. Forterra wants the city to be able to work with them in a unified front to be able to do this. And so they were hoping for tonight that we could find a way of working together the city to work with them to be able to do that. And if the city is, and the city manager is willing to do that, I think that that's great.
Yeah, well, we certainly are in contact with the state. You folks have been, and we're hoping to get funds there. King County is talking about some potential funding. I don't know that we got any exact numbers on any of that yet, but certainly the discussion is going on, and I think that's good. And if the city manager can continue discussing that with those agencies, and hopefully at some point we'll get to some concrete numbers here, or whatever the case may be. But let's continue the discussion, and I just guess I'm fine with moving forward with it, with the staff continuing that dialogue, and if it's talking with the King County included in that, that's fine with me. But that's all I have.
Councilmember Agnew.
Jesse, has the financial climate with Futerra changed at all in the last month?
Yeah, it's changed in the last month drastically. I think where it's changed to is that they are willing and ready to pursue Wayne Land 100%, and what they need is the city to be able to work with them to be able to do that. Meaning that they're willing to work with the county, they're willing to work with the state, they're willing to work with everybody possible, and I'm speaking for them now, but I just want to say that from my understanding is what they need is the city to be able to say they want to work with Forterra to be able to make this happen.
And city manager, you don't we don't need to make a motion on that. You can just handle that.
Well, certainly, I mean, it always helps for council to express its interest, and so if you're not making a motion, I'd at least like to hear individually that you're all supportive of the city continuing to work with agencies to acquire funds for the potential acquisition of the front nine.
I would highly support us looking into both the front nine and the back nine, if at all possible.
Councilmember William.
So, Jesse, you said it was an announcement that you came in tonight. So something has definitely changed with Forterra from previous conversations, and the city's not aware of those changes? Well,
And I think Mr. McNeil can speak more plainly to actually those specific changes. But the idea on that is that Forterra is willing to enter in negotiations both on, or to save the Wayne Golf Course or Wayne Land, and to by doing that, I think what they're saying is that they're willing to work wholeheartedly to make this a priority within their business structure, for as far as bringing the money forward and then working wholeheartedly to find grants to pay back the front amount to make the landowners whole, and then be able to move forward from that with the other money that's available through grants through organizations over the next coming years to be able to make that happen. And I think they're making that a priority at this point. And to do that, they need the city to be able to work with them.
So, city manager, you wanted to ask us to ask you individually. Yes, I do want you to pursue that with Forterra, and as well on the front and the back nine. I also wanted to recommend that we do try to get on the Y-Rate 3-year funding list. I understand that there's been some communications with the city, and I'll talk to you about that off the dais. But we need to start working with them to try to get the money in to repay Forterra, and we have to be on that list for that to occur from those salmon recovery funds. So,
yeah, and I just wanted to be clear: the city's and staff has been willing to work with Forterra or anyone else in regards to acquiring the golf course land as directed by the council. I think the policy question will be for council is who's going to backstop the financial commitments that are made to the property owner? Because I don't think it's going to be Forterra. And if it's going to be the city, then that's going to be a policy issue that we'll have to take up in regards to how we're going to backstop, how we're ultimately going to pay the property owner who wants to sell the land while we wait for grants to be obtained. And that's the policy question that council needs to be aware of.
So what I understand about Forterra is they fill that void. They make the seller whole and pay them off, and then
if Forterra is willing to backstop that until the grants are obtained, then there's really not a role for the city, although we'll play one gladfully. But I think what's being asked of the city ultimately would be to backstop after a certain period of time has expired and no grants are obtained. Now, the world would be perfect if we were able to obtain those grants, and Forterra then was able to provide that financial commitment up front to pay for the land. But I think the issue will be who's ultimately going to pay if the grants are not obtained.
That would be good to know, wouldn't
Yes,
it?
it would be very good to know. And I think that's the dilemma, and that's the challenge, and that's the discussion I've held with Forterra to date in regards to the earnest money. Now, I am assuming the same would also transfer to the actual full purchase of the land in a much larger scale.
Yeah. Yeah, I just know that we could probably pull down state funds to purchase that land. We just need more time and be on the Y-rate 3-year shortlist.
Oh, true, and I think Forterra and the city agree that these lands are likely very high candidates for grant funding, but the time frame required to attain the mass of capital that's necessary to purchase that land, it's not something that can be done in several months. In fact, we've talked in a year's time frame in order to acquire that much funding in order to pay for that property. And our challenge is how do you provide that funding in an immediate time frame so that you could secure the property, but while at the same time you're securing grants. But at some point in time, either Forterra, who's ever backstopping that purchase, is going to want to be paid.
Right. Good.
So, hope that helps.
Yeah.
Councilmember Sandberg.
What I'm hearing is that Forterra is the backstop. And what I'm also hearing is that this property would rank very highly for state and federal grant funding if the city didn't just enter in discussions, but was a willing partner in this procedure. And to date, I'm not sensing that we're a willing partner. We keep on saying, well, we don't have the money, where's the money? Well, we only get the money if we're a willing partner and we demonstrate that to state and federal agencies. And I think this is great that Forterra has stepped up and agreed to be the backstop on this deal. That's what I understand, but I'm sure, I'm hoping that any later speakers will clarify that for us. But I want us to be a willing partner. I don't want us just to engage in discussions.
Well, I think we are willing to partner, and don't take my comments as a mischaracterization that Forterra is the backstop. I have not heard that from them. I have not heard that from the comments this evening. So if you're interpreting that, I think that's an assumption, and it's an assumption that would be welcomed, but I'm not so certain it's based on any reality at the moment.
Okay.
All right. Well, as I'm looking at it and the comments that have been shared, I think there's definitely direction from council or you, city manager, to continue discussions with Forterra to work towards the end goal. But I would also think that it would be appropriate to come back either with a representative from Forterra to explain their role in this to the council, so that we have a clear understanding from the horse's mouth as to their role in this process. And maybe we could have here on the shorter part of the projected agenda something slipped in to have them give a presentation to explain their role with in regards to the Wayne property. And but I do get the sense that there's direction from council for you to continue those discussions with Forterra, the owners of the Wayne property, and obviously the state and the county. So, Jesse, does that meet your needs?
Yeah, I think that was the point, is just trying to say that they want to hear that we're willing and wanting to their participation in this. And then from there, I think that they'll step forward into
I think,
more.
I believe, as I understand it through this whole process, the council's supportive of One Bothell in trying to acquire the Wayne property with the limited resources that we have. And we've asked the city manager, and he has gone forward, and he's been working with the potential players in this process. And so we're just going to have him continue that. But also, I think it'd be prudent, so that we get clear information to all of us up here, for Forterra to come in and give a little presentation on their role and how all the pieces in their view are going to come together.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. James, you're next on the sign-up sheet, I believe.
Hi, everybody. So I just want to clarify a couple things. Foterra has actually offered, through a process of conservation, to help the city, state, county acquire the entire land, and to do that over several years through a grant process. So essentially what we would do is apply for various grants throughout the next 2 to 4 years, and as those grants come in, they actually offset and pay back Foterra. So what they're doing is they're kind of a stopgap right now. They would come in, they would help us acquire that land. So what they're asking for is to make sure that the city is a willing participant with King County and the state to help them acquire the land. So as long as we have that communication, open dialogue, and the city at the table, we should be fine. So Bob, I'm willing to come and meet with you and Foterra at the same time. Dale, I think it's an awesome thing that we have them come and give that speech on what they're willing to do. But I want to assure you guys that Foterra, the state, the county, everybody, the community, everybody wants to save this, and everybody is working very hard to make that happen. So we need you guys sitting at that table alongside of us. So that's what we're asking for. We're asking for you guys to be there with us and supporting what we're trying to do. Any questions?
Deputy Mayor.
James, thank you for your comments. I think what some of the council members, we need to hear from the horse's mouth, from
absolutely
Foterra, what their expectation of the city is. We're hearing from you and Jesse, and it's nothing against you guys. It's just we're kind of hearing second, third hand that they want us at the table to be a participant, but we kind of need to know what their view of participating is. And so I think having the city manager continue discussing with them, have Foterra come in and give a presentation so it's very clear to all of us at the dais what their expectation of the city's involvement is. And that'd be a great, probably a study session item so we can have a little more open conversation about it.
Yeah, I think it's important to, and thank you, Dale, but I think it's also important to realize that over the past 4 months, we've worked very hard to get to this point. And I think the message is, yes, Foterra needs to come in and speak on the behalf. It wouldn't matter if it was a private party or not. But I think if we can get Bob in those meetings with us, that we're meeting with Foterra and King County, I think that dialogue has changed over the last couple of weeks from being able to get appraisals and things like that, which we're now understanding that process has started on both the front and the back 9. So we've come a long way. And what the message is, we don't want to come out here and say we have funding right now. What we want to say is we have partners at the table that are willing to fund it, but we need to get through the process. You have to have a purchase and sale agreement. You have to have an intent. You have to have appraisals done. So those processes, we want to know that we're partnering with the city, the county, the state, and everybody sitting at the table as we go through that process. So at the end, we're very successful in what we're trying to do.
Fully understand that, and council's given the city manager direction to go and participate. He's going to give a report back along with Foterra as to, what the expectation of the city is, and I think that's where some of the unease is where we don't have a clear view of what the expectation of the city is. So that's really important for us to be a player in this. Is we have to know our expectation. We can't go in with just a blank sheet of expectation. We need to know what the expectation is of the city, and that's what we've done is we've directed the city manager continue those talks, get into those meetings, and come back with those expectations so we can provide better and more clear direction, however it may be.
And so from what I'm understanding and hearing everybody, that I feel we have a unanimous support from the council and the city manager to do whatever it takes to work with the partner sitting at the table to try to acquire the land. I'm kind of sensing that.
What was done was there was a majority consensus to have the city manager continue talks with Foterra, to work with Foterra, Bothell, the state and the county, and towards the end goal, but also finding out what the expectation role of the city is. Perfect. So that we as a council can provide better direction. There's too many unknowns at this point for us because we don't know what the state expects of us. We don't know what the county expects of us or Forterra. So we need information so we can make decisions.
Fantastic. Thank you. That's
Great.
exactly what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Councilmember Evans.
Yes, I've heard terms willing partner, willing participant, player. I need a definition, a clear definition of what those mean.
So let me tell you.
Let me finish here, okay? So in North Creek Forest, people came to us and wanted to buy North Creek Forest. We didn't have funding, but we worked very closely with them to submit grants to the RCO. We got a federal grant in that, and I don't think we provided matching money. Those grants were able to match each other, so there really wasn't much money came out of the city's pocket because we didn't have it.
Mm-hmm.
So if a willing participant or a willing partner means money out of the city's pocket right now, I'm not ready to commit to that because I have no source for that funding.
Mm-hmm.
I am willing to commit working the grant process, just as we did with North Creek Forest. Right along with them. In fact, the city prepared the grants. We made the presentations with North Creek's support. It was fabulous. It worked great. And we got those grants. But there wasn't money out of the city's pocket for those. We worked together to get that. So to me, in my mind, that's what a willing participant is right now, or a willing partner, just as we did for North Creek.
And that's exactly what we're asking for you guys to do.
You got it.
Okay.
Councilmember Sandberg.
Do you happen to know if Forterra can apply directly to like an RCO grant, or does it have to be a city or like a municipality or some other entity?
They can file for grants on behalf of cities and municipalities.
Okay, so but they couldn't. Could they be the lead applicant? They have to have a city
Not
working with them.
necessarily, but so if just hypothetically, if Forterra goes ahead and we're able to acquire the Wayne land, then they would be filing grants for the person who would ultimately be acquiring it. They can't file for themselves. But for instance, if One Bothell was the person buying the land, then they could file those grants for One Bothell. But if they own it, they can't file for themselves. Okay. So they'd be working with the county in that case, or the city, which we're hoping they'd be working with the city. The city could help fill out the paperwork like Bill just said.
Okay, and that's what I understand as the city being a willing participant, is staff working with the organization to submit grant proposals and the like. That's what I'm seeing as a willing participant, and that and by doing that, that shows the city supports your efforts, those efforts.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Bill.
All of the grants that are submitted to RCO come from a government agency. The government agencies have to be the ones that sign the applications, just as we did for Trust for Public Lands. So Forterra can be at the table with us, and they can help us with I've been doing this for a lot of years.
Mm-hmm.
They can help us with the presentation to the evaluation committee and all those things. But the bottom line is the grant comes to the city, and then we spend the money that way. So I'm not aware of any situation where another agency has got a grant other than a municipality or state agency or something like that.
And I think that's correct. Just like the grant that we submitted for King County Conservation Futures of $1.2 million, it was from the city of Bothell. Those can be awarded to the city of Bothell. Bothell has to sponsor those.
Yep.
Bothell 1 submitted one for the back nine. The city of Bothell would still, if they were to receive those funds, my understanding is that the city of Bothell would have to sponsor that and be the recipient of the funds.
Yep. I think that's right.
But that's why we have to be a participant in this process, because we're the only ones that can apply for those grant funds. Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other questions? Nope.
Thank you all. We really appreciate everything you guys are doing. Thank you.
No, we're good. Thanks. Other sign-ups this evening? Patrick?
Patrick Ewing. Actually, I wanted to talk about the comprehensive plan, and knowing how public hearings go, there will be an opportunity in the future for me to make detailed comments on that. But I wanted to, in the visitor section, just talk process, and that is, this is a very important document. This is the definition document of the city. It's been prepared over years and years and years, thousands of hours of effort. People's hearts and souls have been put into this document. It defines how we want the city to grow. So this is a big deal. We only get to update this document. This is the major update. It only happens every 8 years. And so this is a big deal, right? And I know you've scheduled multiple meetings to cover this, and it's going to take time to work through this and get it right. So the question to council, or what I would request of you, is right up front is you talk about how you're going to work through this. Which nights are we going to cover which sections? I think by doing that, it'll help you, because you've got a lot of material to go through. The public, I think, I just found it was posted last week. So I've just started the review. It's hundreds and hundreds of pages, lots of changes. So it's going to take time. So what I would request of you is to plan out how you're going to work this. Maybe staff has a recommendation worked out for you already, that these nights we're going to cover these sections or whatnot. And then the other question that I had was, it was unclear. I know that a lot of property owner requests just got postponed to next year, but apparently not all of them, because there's some that are still in the markup. So if you could make a clarification if we're really not going to cover the property owner ones, or we are going to cover the ones that are contained within the document. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. Anybody else with wish to address council this evening? Show of hands. No? Great. Thank you all for coming this evening. I appreciate it. Next on the list is our consent agenda. No items were pulled. Is there a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion by Deputy Mayor Spivey and a second by Councilmember Agnew. Let's see. Oh, here it is. Everybody can place their vote. The clerk can display. Passes unanimous with Councilmember Lamb absent and excused. Next on our list is new business, AB 15046, consider approval of purchase of open space from Washington State Department of Transportation. We have a presentation this evening from Aaron Lionheart, our Public Works Director.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Hey, Aaron.
Here this evening to speak to you about an opportunity that just arose for us. The Washington State Department of Transportation has a little over 4-acre piece of property that's adjacent to several city properties, including the Sammamish River Park that has been acquired over time. It's basically across the Sammamish River from Blythe Park and the West Riverside Drive Trail. The city has had a lease for this property to use it for park purposes since 1975 that we really weren't aware of until we received the notice that it was going to be terminated. So the property will be put up for auction by WashDOT at the end of May, unless the city takes action to or expresses our interest in purchasing it and providing 10% deposit of the purchase price. The market value that WashDOT is asking for it is $50,600 total. It's currently zoned for public park and open space use. It has steep slopes and several easements across it, so it's not very developable for public purposes, but it would be a great addition to the city's open space system. So if you have any questions for me, I will leave my presentation at that.
Great. Thank you, Aaron. Could you go over the 10% and the total value that the state has again?
Yes. So the 10% would be $5,060.
And the total price is the $55,000?
The total price is $50,600. The budget impact listed on the agenda bill is roughly $55,000 to account for the acquisition costs and transaction costs.
All right, and that was coming out of the park surplus?
Right. We have a King County levy that we've been included in for years that's specifically for open space. So we receive about $40,000 a year for that. So we do have a balance there that could pay for this.
Councilmember Evans.
Thank you, Aaron. This is a heck of a deal. Can we get their appraiser? to do some other appraisals for us. I like their numbers. Do we, at the very top of your slide, if you can slide that down just a little bit, there's a, kind of a hashed line there at the top, which I think represents a trail that we have from Park at Bothell Landing. Do we have access, or we have the city-owned parcel, and then if we get this property, what is our potential for access across those other, I guess it's 3 parcels there to make that trail connection?
Well, we believe they're fairly good. I'm trying to remember before Pat Parkhurst left. I remember there have been conversations about easements across the properties, but I can't speak to specifics at this moment, Councilman. I'm sorry.
So that, hopefully that would be a goal here, is to get easements or something across those other properties. And I think at one time we may have even talked about potential acquisition of those parcels, because those are somewhat steep also, I think. And is most of that wetlands along the river? Do you have any idea, or does planning have any idea how far a buffer would extend back from the river there in that
The
area?
river buffer does cover quite a bit of that property. So even the washed out property that we're looking at now, the river buffer takes over half of that. So I believe that would extend all the way north.
Okay. Great. Well, I'm very supportive of this.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Agnew.
Yes, I'd also be very supportive of this. You were saying that it's built basically as open spaces. Nobody could sneak into the auction and buy it and put up a coffee stand or something along those lines?
So since it is zoned public parks and open space, it would require a rezone in order to do that. And even if it was rezoned, the property is quite challenging. Between the steep slopes and the buffer on the river, there's just a very small sliver of property up along the roadway that's really there at all.
Great. Councilmember Sandberg.
If someone else was to purchase the property, though, would they be able to get some kind of development on that property through a process like a reasonable use exception or something like that?
I don't know. I would look to Bill Weislogo for that one.
Well, if it's zoned PPOS, Parks, Public Open Space, reasonable use is based on the uses allowed in that zone. So yes, possibly, if it didn't have any other use, but recognize that the PPOS zone is for parks and public open space uses. So reasonable use might be open space. So it's not necessarily true that a reasonable use exemption could be granted that would allow something more intensive than what's there now, for example.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
It sounds like well, if we weren't to purchase it, the possibility could exist that the purchaser might request a rezone, at which point a reasonable use exception could result in something different for that property.
Well, but you can't have a reason without also changing the comprehensive plan, and that's a legislative action.
Mm-hmm.
No one is entitled to a comp plan amendment and a rezone.
Good point. And then in the staff report, it says that the funding for this purchase will come from the Park Reserve Fund balance, and the city and the source of revenue for that fund is that the city receives approximately $43,000 per year of King County levy funding specifically for acquisition of open space. And then you said that the balance of that fund is $161,000 roughly.
Right. So the Proposition 2 funding, which ran through 2013, the balance of that is the $160,000 approximately. And then King County passed a new levy that started in 2014 that goes through 2019, and that is approximately $43,000 a year. So we have a little over $40,000 for the new levy as well.
So then just as future reference, there are funds, for example, for property appraisals and the like, for open space that we might want to acquire in King County using King County funds.
Yes, and historically we've used for the North Creek Forest for expenditures that are either grant ineligible or we don't quite have enough. For example, appraisals and studies that we have to do as part of our grant funding. We have used the King County levy for.
Okay, thank you.
Others? Councilmember Ram?
So yeah, I do support looking into this further. I think that's what you're looking for tonight. But I was curious. It said that there could potentially be parts of freeways underneath the surface of the lot in your staff report. So what, can you elaborate a little on what that could be?
Well, so this property was purchased by what was at the time the Washington State, I believe, Department of Highways. And so the intention was to eventually build a roadway that came off of 522 and went over to the other side of the river. So they had property originally all along the river on the other side. So I don't know. It could have been part of the original Red Brick Road, which is on the other side of 96th. But particularly since we don't intend to actually develop it, I don't know that there would be much of an issue, but it's certainly something that we would explore as part of the title search and other search of public records. One additional thing to point out, in addition to, you can see the Sammamish River Trail shown on this exhibit. There are two other easements that cross it that would go with the property no matter who purchased it. One is for what is now the King County wastewater. They have a large sewer line along this corridor. And there's also access easement to the city-owned property, the small square up above as well. So there's not a whole lot of property that doesn't have some call on it.
Okay. And then in the CFP sheet, it says, and I'm sorry if Councilmember Sandberg already asked this, but it said for the secured funding portion of it, it says voter approved bond that's pending. Is that from the Parks and
Public Spaces levy?
Public Space levy, okay.
Right.
So we do have some sort of secured funding to pay for this?
We do, the
Okay.
King County levy funds.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else? Councilmember Evans?
Yeah, I would move the recommended action.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Councilmember Spivey.
Great, thank you, Mayor. I believe as a council, we've always been, if the opportunity arises to, and it's within our means to purchase open space, that we do. This is obviously within our means, and it is open space that is currently being used by the citizens regionally because of the trail and all, and this gives us the opportunity to secure it in perpetuity. So because it is within our means, we do have the funding. I think it's prudent for us to move forward with the 10%, do our due diligence, and then if everything's good, we move forward with the full purchase. Again, I think as a council, current and past, we've always been supportive of open space. We've just generally been encumbered by not having funds, and I have to agree with Councilmember Evans that, wow, I like this appraiser here. So, yeah, I'm in full support.
Others? If everybody could place their vote for the underlying motion. And the clerk display passes unanimously. Hate that word. Great, thank you. Next on the agenda this evening is AB 15047 to consider adoption of an ordinance initiating or condemning property needed for Main Street Extension project. And our city attorney, Joe Beck. And there are no sign-up sheets. Oh, okay. Great, thank you. Mr. Beck?
Thank you. So I always fight with the overhead when I'm putting these things on. Must be directionally challenged or something. Thank you, Mayor and council members. Tonight I am addressing the recommendation to council to adopt an ordinance initiating condemnation of the property that's needed for the Main Street Extension project. This particular project property, as shown on the map, is known to council, I think, as the BSC or Bothell Service Center property. This is a piece that is needed for Main Street extension. Main Street goes right through the building, the edge of the building, or a portion of the building there. Also, there is the need to explore for contamination cleanup, and as you know, that process takes quite a bit of time, and so we need to get in and be able to start that process as soon as possible. So we're bringing this to you tonight for that purpose, to initiate the process. As you know, and as I've told you many times before with these types of ordinances, we do make every effort to negotiate a purchase of the property short of condemnation. And just because you pass this ordinance tonight does not mean that we will stop pursuing that process. In fact, I think that there's a good chance, negotiations are fairly advanced, and I think there's a good chance, based on what the city manager has told me, that we will still be able to accomplish this through a negotiated purchase. However, because of the length of time involved in condemnation, and also the urgent need to do the remedial exploration with regard to contamination, potential contamination, it is necessary to get this process started. I want to point out that on the agenda bill, under the budget impact and source of funds, there is a mistake that is mine. I'll take responsibility for it. We indicated, or I indicated in an early version of this agenda bill, that developer fees would be a part of this, the funding for this, and I learned as I was drafting this that was not something that we would be relying on, and I corrected the ordinance and just didn't get the front page of the agenda bill corrected, so I apologize for that. I didn't intend to mislead anybody with that mistake. So what we're asking tonight is that council approve or adopt the proposed ordinance initiating condemnation of this property that's needed for the Main Street Extension project. This is a public hearing, and so we certainly need to provide opportunity for public comment, but I'll be happy to answer questions once you have taken any public comment.
Great, thank you. We do have, it is an open public hearing. I don't have any sign-up sheets. Or I have a sign-up sheet, but I don't have any sign-ups. Is anybody here to speak on this matter? I don't see any hands. Again, anybody here to speak on this matter? No. All right, council. Deputy Mayor Spivey.
Great, thank you, Mayor. City Attorney, as I understand it, oftentimes we go through this process and, as you've stated, try to come to some sort of resolution without going through condemnation, but oftentimes a property owner would, because we go through this process, they do reap some tax benefits and things like that. Is that true?
Absolutely. In order to obtain the exemptions that are available for under a condemnation, it is necessary to do it under condemnation, under threat of condemnation. So we have in the past gone through this exercise for that purpose alone.
Essentially as part of an agreed plan.
Right.
Okay.
And I'm not asserting that that's what we're doing this time, but it does have that benefit.
Okay. Thank you.
Others? Councilmember Sandberg.
Is there an appraised value for the property?
There is an appraisal, and we'll be happy to share that in executive session, but that is not public information at this time.
And then, so I was going to ask you about the source of funding, but you clarified that. So then that, well, I can tell you that what is publicly available is on the King County Assessor webpage. I typed in the property parcel ID, and the King County Assessor values that property in the 2014 tax rolls at about $1.5 million. And so if there aren't developer fees going towards the purchase of this property, then where is the money coming from?
I'm going to defer to the finance director to respond to that.
From other capital monies that will be coming in, also that were originally not known at the time the budget was put together?
So when I look at the capital facilities project sheet, it shows me estimated project funding, and it lists the 2013 bonds, which is the bulk of it. The rest of it is just, small change. And I thought the 2013 bonds were used for improvements on the Multi-Way Boulevard. And then it also lists the voter-approved bond, which was the public space bond, that failed. So again, I'm not clear where the money would be coming from.
Is that the most current document that you have in front of you? That sounds like a draft to me.
I am looking at page 73 of our agenda packet. And so when the staff report said that developer fees would be paying for the purchase of this property, I went to the capital facilities plan sheet and said, oh, well, I don't see developer fees on here. But what I do see are 2013 bonds, which I wasn't on council at the time, so I'm not exactly sure what those bonds were purchased for, but I thought the bulk of it was for the Multi-Way Boulevard improvements. And then it lists the public spaces bond as unsecured funding, which is not available. So I don't know what the property appraised at. I can only look at the King County Assessor website and make some kind of guess that isn't completely wild. And so then, and that's a significant amount of money, and I don't see where the 1.5 million is coming from, or something equivalent to that.
That is for the 1.45 million. Can I take a look at this and get back to you, because that's not what I originally thought the question was. So I was prepared to answer another question. So let me take a quick look at this and respond.
So I have another question then. So if we engage in these condemnation proceedings, and I guess a judge would rule in our favor, don't we have to come up with the money immediately at that point?
We do.
Okay. And then another question I have is, why did the city opt out?
I'm sorry, let me clarify that. That was a little bit short. We do, if we want to obtain the property. We don't get title to the property until we come up with the money.
Okay. And so why did the city opt out of the federal and state relocation programs? And then, which means then that we don't get to offer that. We don't get to offer relocation assistance as a carrot for the property owner to engage in negotiations with us. So why did we opt out of that relocation program?
Well, relocation is geared more for tenants than for the property owner, first of all. And relocation is a requirement you have to provide it if you have federal funds in the project. We have never had a policy or a practice of paying relocation for non-federally funded projects. None of our projects that have lacked federal funding, and in fact, you have explicitly adopted this same language with reference to other condemnation actions that we've done that did not involve federal funds in the downtown area. So it's our practice. It's expensive to pay relocation, and if you don't have to, it saves the city it can save the city some money.
Is there a state relocation program that kind of is based on the same thing? You know, if we receive state money, then we have to provide relocation money?
Well, there is a state relocation. There are provisions in state law that mirror and are adopted because of the federal relocation requirement, and and we operate under the state and federal. That's why I say state and federal relocation, but it's tied to federal money. And so a lot of the state money some of the state money we get, maybe most of it is actually federal money that the state is handing out. If there is that federal money, we have to provide relocation. But in this situation, this is not property for which we would be federal eligible for federal money, and there's no benefit to offering relocation. So instead, we should opt out of it to save the city money.
Then how are we going to pay for the cleanup effort on that property?
That's a separate issue. Cleanup, this is just the acquisition of the property. The cleanup is a separate issue.
But cleanup that we've used, when we've cleaned up other properties, we have used like State Department of Ecology resources to do that. So if we are not, if this parcel is not a part of a federal and state relocation program, does that mean that in addition to acquisition, that's a separate issue, but thinking forward, are we going to be able to access State Department of Ecology grants to clean up the parcel?
Yes. Use of MOTCA funds does not require relocation for acquisition of the property itself.
Okay.
And as we've discussed in the past, the city's ability to purchase the property is highly dependent on our ability to obtain grant funds from the Department of Ecology.
Okay. Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
I'm a little frustrated with the retail portion of it, because there are tenants in there, and I think I've shopped at every single one of them, that they're going to get, the owner's going to get money for his building or her building, whoever owns it, and then ultimately these tenants are just said, sorry, your lease is ending early. Yet they've made a commitment to a longer term. They've counted on establishing a business there and paying advertising, and now they're being moved out without any nod in their way. That's my concern. And so I've actually had conversations with at least one of the business owners in there who recently signed a lease about a year ago for, I believe it was a 3-year term, and wasn't even told that this was going to happen. And so that just doesn't sit very well with me. Is there a way that we could take care of those tenants since they're being relocated in adjustment to the purchase agreement?
Again, this is not a purchase and sell agreement negotiations. This is a authorization to proceed forward with the condemnation.
There. Yep.
So,
okay. Anybody else? No. Councilmember Sandberg.
Was Director Shackman able to answer my question?
Oh, great.
Director Shackman, I believe that it is from funds that were not being needed from another major project, but I need to verify that tomorrow when I see an updated worksheet. So I'll have to get back to you with an answer.
So we should have the opportunity to have a...
I think we need to know clearly that source of funding before we approve this.
Mm-hmm. That's something we'd have to wait for till tomorrow. Is there something, if we brought this up at the end of the meeting, maybe potentially know something by then?
Let me make a phone call at break and get back to you.
Okay. Do you want to speak to this?
Well, I think the action tonight is to authorize potential condemnation of the property. If, in fact, that happens, at some point, City Manager, we will have a purchase and sale agreement come back to us, either from the court or whatever that proceeding, if it does go to condemnation. This has to come back to us to approve the purchase of this property. Is that correct?
In one form or another, yes.
Okay.
I need to clarify. If we do it under condemnation, again, we're not expecting for this to go to a court process. But if we go through the full court process and don't negotiate a resolution, ultimately, it doesn't come back to you for a final decision. It is approved. It is ordered by a court. It's our expectation, high degree of probability that it will come back to you in the form of some sort of either negotiated within the condemnation process itself or negotiated through a purchase and sale agreement outside of the condemnation. But that is, I cannot let you think that there's absolutely no chance or that it absolutely will come back to you. Because if we get a judge's order that says this is how you pay for it, this is the authorization to follow that judge's order.
And let me just clarify. I think although we will still continue to work on the purchase and sale agreement, there's no guarantee that we'll be able to achieve that, and we need to be able to move forward with the condemnation in order to fulfill the city's revitalization plans, in order to fulfill the development of Block D. And if that's the course of action that looks like we will be taking, we will be advising council along the way.
Okay, so I guess that was my next question, was the timing of this. If we do delay this a couple of weeks, what does that do to our timing process?
Well, I think it just adds several more weeks already to a process that's already lengthened as a result of our inability to gain an agreement through a purchase and sale, a voluntary agreement. And again, that has impacts upon the development potential of several of our blocks.
Okay.
Okay. Does anybody want to make a motion to move this forward right now or wait?
Do we have a number?
I don't think we have a number. If there's no, I can't make motions.
I'd like to move to postpone it.
So we have a motion to postpone to later in the meeting, yes?
To May 5th.
Oh, wow, May 5th. 1 second, City Manager.
Yeah, I was just only interrupting because it looked like the Finance Director had information. If not, then I apologize for the interruption.
Yeah.
No, I'm ready. Yes, it was that on the 2013 bond, there was funds that was not needed for another project that came in less than what we had anticipated or received additional grant funding, and therefore the money is available to use towards this purpose. In addition, some excess real estate excise tax that came in over and above what was anticipated is also being used, but definitely the bulk, about $900,000, is coming straight from the bond proceeds, which we have to use, and this was a project that we could allocate those monies to.
Does that help?
Well, it helps, but I think that when we're finding significant amounts of money for capital projects through cost savings or through unexpected increases in REIT revenue, I think it's important to have a discussion about what other projects that those could be used on, and it'd be nice to have that information a little bit further in advance to really digest that. So I still stand by my motion to postpone to May 5th.
Motion is to postpone until May 5th, and it was seconded by, I believe, Councilmember Agnew. Your second still stand? No, it does not stand. So you have a motion. Do you have a second? Seeing no motion, I turn the floor to Councilmember Evans.
Yes, I'd like to move that we authorize the city manager to pursue, I'm on open space, which is good also. That we adopt the proposed ordinance initiating condemnation of certain property needed for public use for the Main Street project extension, and I would like to speak to my motion if there's a second.
You have a second.
Okay. I agree with what Councilmember Sandberg mentioned. There is funding that comes available to us, and we do have a lot of projects that we need funding for that are unfunded now. I believe that this is and high priority. I don't know if you mentioned that or not, but I think we do have high priority projects. I think this is one of those. This is a key part of our downtown development that, by acquiring this property, so many other things move forward to keep that downtown process going. I think it's important. So I will be supporting the motion. I would, if in the future, if the staff can, one thing I noticed on this item, same thing that was mentioned on the CFP worksheet, that it has voter-approved bonding there pending. Well, obviously that didn't happen. The same thing is on the capital facilities worksheet for the open space, the item just before that we looked at. So I think it's important if staff, when they bring this back to us, to update those worksheets, even though they're not adopted, but at least it's an update with a recommended funding source, because we know the funding source that was there when we adopted the plan or the CFP isn't there any longer. So certainly a proposal to update those and give us some idea would be helpful. But I think this is a priority project that we want to move forward with. There's cleanup that needs to be done here, and grants that we're going to get for the cleanup, and I think it's important to move it forward.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Agnew, and then Councilmember Sandberg.
I will be supporting this motion. I wasn't initially. I felt that we needed to have a secure funding source. It is a little concerning to me that we arbitrarily just came up with $1.4 million from some other source, kind of, or $900,000. What?
Can we take a break to let her address that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, the bond that was issued is restricted to certain projects. If you are not using them for something that they were originally intended for, there was some language within the official statement for the bond that limited the use of these monies for specific areas within the city, basically the RDA, which is right downtown. So for downtown revitalization. So because of the way the OS was written, we're very limited. And I think the breakdown, as far as the language, I will check into that as far as the spreadsheet to make sure that we actually have the most updated version in front of us. And I think the breakdown is actually in the agenda bill where it has budget source, and I should have provided better information within that budget source. And I apologize for that.
Great, thank you, too. Tom? Is that a good explanation?
No, thank you for that. So with that being said, I will support this. Hesitantly, I might add, but I will support this.
Councilmember Rayam, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I will support the motion. I do, not to pile on poor Director Jackman, but yeah, to have not knowing what the funding source was, that was obviously something I red flagged as well. Or it would just be really helpful to know when we do look at these sheets, like if it's not something that actually happened, what we're using to pay for the acquisition would be really helpful. And then I just wanted to speak to something that Councilmember Sandberg, I think, said, that when funding comes available, I would like to have a little more control over what that money is reallocated to pay for. There's been a request for just have an appraisal done of the Wayne Golf Course, and I've been told that we can't do that because there's no money, and that's a order of magnitude smaller amount of money than this. So I just would really hope that maybe in the future we can have a little more involvement with the council on new money that comes into the city that we didn't have allocated or planned to use. That's it.
Deputy Mayor? No. I thought you spoke. Really? By all means. How did we go from Agnew? I just wrote your name. I wrote your name down first, and then went to Rayam. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I will be voting no on this motion, and I would like to remind council and maybe members of the public that we asked you, the voters, to approve borrowing money to buy the exact parcel that we're talking about in that public spaces bond. And so actually it turns out that we asked, but we didn't really need it because we're finding the money anyway. And I think that sends a really bad message. And I also think that it is our responsibility to have a say through our representation of our citizens, to have a very clear and direct say about how monies are spent. And so I feel I'm just disappointed about this particular process. I'm disappointed that we have this urgent need to start cleanup because we already have engaged in this purchase and sale agreement with Regency, and at the time I expressed my concerns about moving forward with that purchase and sale agreement with Regency, not having had this property already purchased. And so we're in this situation because of that. And I hope that moving forward, even though we don't have to provide relocation assistance, that we do consider some amount of compensation to help those business owners that are going to be affected.
Deputy Mayor? Pass? All right. This is the first time in 12 years I've not seen Sam and be able to present a precise, exact document and answer a question immediately when put on the spot. So you are an impressive finance director. Thank you. Appreciate the details discussed tonight. I will be voting in favor of this item. This is a catalyst to what we voted on a few weeks ago, and that was for a specialty grocer. And I think we're all excited for a specialty grocer in downtown Bothell. This property is key to seeing that happen. So another movement toward economic development of downtown Bothell, who we all love in our hearts and excited to see. So you're going to take the opportunity.
I am.
Good.
I will be supporting this. The one thing that I would have to defer to the city manager at some point, but I don't believe that in the Parks and Open Space bond that this piece of property specifically was listed, but that for the multi-way boulevard itself is what those monies would have gone to. But I will be supporting this. This is a key part of our economic redevelopment, and so yes.
Great, thank you. Everybody's had the chance to speak. We do have a motion on the floor, which is to adopt the proposed ordinance initiating condemnation of certain property needed for public use of the Main Street Extension Project. Motion was made by Councilmember Evans, seconded by Mayor Freed. If all could place their vote. And the clerk display. Passes 5-1 with Councilmember Lamb absent and excused. Thank you for that conversation. Next.
Mayor?
Yes?
If I might recommend that we, the next item is probably longer than what we're scheduled for before our break. Maybe we take it a little early.
I'm certainly in support of that. So we'll take a break until exactly 8 o'clock.
And this is to partially fund existing street maintenance costs, and then also to consider in the future a ballot TBD license fee of up to $100 once a final agreed upon street preservation strategy is identified. A little bit about transportation benefit districts. They are independent taxing districts, and they are specifically to fund transportation maintenance and improvements. Some revenue examples for transportation benefit districts are shown on this slide. You can have up to a maximum $100 per year license renewal fee. You could have also a 0.2% sales and use tax, or up to a 0.2 sales and use tax percent. With the sales and use tax, it can be up to 10 years, and unless it's reauthorized by voters. So everything but the $20 license fee has to be approved by voters. The column in the middle shows the estimated annual revenue from Bothell for these particular options. Some information about transportation benefit districts that currently exist. Some of this information is somewhat outdated. I had some difficulties finding all of it, but there are approximately 46 TBDs who have adopted a $20 license fee currently. One of those is the Seattle Transportation Benefit District, and they are scheduled to increase their fee to $80 in June of this year. It was part of a vote to support transit in the Seattle area. There's one TBD that has a $10 license fee, and there are a little over a dozen transportation benefit districts that use sales and use tax. The reason that staff is requesting a transportation benefit district here in Bothell is to replace lost and one-time revenues. Staff estimates about a $1.2 million annual revenue loss associated with fees that the city collected previously. This biennial budget, 2015 to 2016, we have a little over $3 million in one-time revenues in our budget for street maintenance. The Transportation Benefit District, as we go forward and work with the community, we would also look to restore maintenance programs such as repair of pavement and sidewalks, and also increase our pavement preservation program and potentially increase sidewalk construction. So the recommended next steps would be to request that Council adopt an ordinance establishing a citywide transportation benefit district. And then staff would come back to Council probably in late spring to have Council consider a $20 license renewal fee. And then staff at the same time would be proceeding with a public engagement process to determine the preferred level for a transportation benefit district ballot measure. And that is all I have for presentation. Finance Director Shackman and I are here to answer any questions.
Great, thanks so much. We're going to jump into public comment. Is there anybody from the public? I don't have any sign-ups on this. Anybody, just a show of hands? I don't see any hands being raised. All right, so we'll jump into council questions. Who would like to jump in first? Councilmember Sandberg.
Thank you. In your staff report, you talk about putting the remainder of the funding strategy on a ballot. So assuming that council goes with the staff recommendation, which is to do implement a non-voted $20 car tab fee, and then go to the voters for an additional increase in the car tab. When do you propose putting an additional TBD funding strategy on the ballot?
That would depend on how our public process goes. If we start the public process to determine what that level would be, even as soon as this summer, it probably wouldn't be until early next year at the earliest that we would be going to the voters.
And then it looked like a couple of the options, like, for example, the voter-approved maximum 0.2% sales and use tax. It expires in 10 years unless reauthorized by voters. Does the $20 car tab fee ever expire?
No. But the TBD can discontinue the collection, but it doesn't have a sunset date.
And then along with the $20 non-voted option, there's also a non-voted transportation impact fee on commercial and industrial uses. And why is staff not recommending that option, either in addition to the $20 car tab fee or in place of, to raise needed funds?
It could certainly be an option that staff could review during that outreach period. I don't know enough about it at this point in time, so it would require additional research.
Basically, these are the options most seen throughout, all of the cities that the Public Works Director identified earlier. So these are just the most common. We could definitely look at something that would be kind of different than what most are implementing, if council wishes to do that.
So there are no cities that you're aware of that have placed a transportation impact fee on commercial uses to pay for a TBD?
At this time, I don't know of any, but that doesn't mean that there aren't any. We could definitely look into it, but it's certainly not a common occurrence.
I guess I'd be interested in knowing why it's not, because it is one of the funding options available under state law. So I'd be curious as to know why it's not exercised more frequently. And then just a clarification. So you mentioned in the staff report that all of Recology's funds that they pay as a part of their contract for pavement preservation because of the impact that the garbage trucks have going on our streets. You said that money was originally earmarked for pavement preservation and then now has to be moved into the street fund to kind of backfill needs in the street fund. So what is the difference between the pavement preservation fund and the street fund?
Operations is that it is potholes. It is covering the cost of the maintenance that's happening in the street fund, not actual pavement preservation, which is a capital program, not an operating program. All of our pavement preservation, like overlays, that type of thing, are all in our capital fund. Street maintenance is the day-to-day maintenance of street sidewalks and that type of thing.
Okay. And then I remember that we had one member of the public, I think, talk about a TBD the last time we mentioned that. Last time we covered this topic in our study session. Do we have any other public testimony to date on the TBD?
I have not received any comments to date, and the commenter at the study session mentioned the priority to use TBD funds for maintenance, which is what the city staff is proposing.
Okay. And okay, so if that's what you're proposing, where is it specifically in the ordinance that says that TBD funds would be used primarily for maintenance of existing roads?
The ordinance is very broad as far as what the funding could be used for. The ordinance that is before you now is merely to form the Transportation Benefit District. Staff needs to come back and council needs to meet as the Transportation Benefit District Board in order to determine any funding. So in order to put in place even the non-voted $20 fee would require another trip back to council as the TBD board to make that decision.
Okay, thank you.
Others? Councilmember Ram?
So I am a big advocate for road funding. So I wanted to follow up on what Councilmember Sandberg just said. So I would be supportive of this if I knew that it wasn't going to be used for additional roads. You know, if it was for overlays for capital projects or for maintenance of roadways. And so my question is, and the way this is written is very broad. It could be just anything that has to do with transportation that we could fund with this board. when we, if there is an authorization to use the transportation benefit district, or to create this transportation benefit district, whenever we are asked to put something on the ballot or to allocate a $20 tab or charge a $20 tab fee, do we get to specify then what that money goes to, or is it based on what this is saying?
I'll respond to that. Anything that goes on the ballot, you're going to have to specify, and there's some language depending on whether it's the sales tax or the above $20 fee. There's some language in the statute that requires certain specifics. So you would have to make a decision on the ballot language at that point. For the $20 fee, when you enacted that, you certainly have the authority to say how that is going to be spent or direct how it was going to be spent. So as the board, so this is just the foundational forming of the district ordinance. It says nothing other than that you can do everything that a transportation benefit district can do. Then each thing you choose to do, you will enact specifically and with specific guidelines. And it'll be up to you how specific you want to be. So you'll have that opportunity when it comes back to you.
Okay, thank you. And then so I'm just kind of curious. And I apologize if this is kind of what we decided on in the retreat, but how come we are? I would hope that we'd go to the public outreach piece first, and then figure out what people's appetite are for a transportation benefit district, and then go into the funding. So the way it's laid out now, it sounds like we're going to create the district, charge people $20 tabs, and then go out and tell them, well, we need a lot more than the tabs the $20 car tab, we need 60 or 100, whatever. Right. To me, as a person that buys car tabs, I'd be a little bit annoyed by that line. You know, why didn't you guys? Why did if we needed 60, why did we start off with just 20 just because we could? When instead of, because I personally, I'd rather just be like, this is how much we think we need, and to do this project or to improve our roads, it's going to be $60 a car.
Basically, at the retreat, it was decided that the way staff would bring this back to the council was bringing forward the $20 that we can bring forward, because the need is so great, and it's known that after the 2-year period of 15-16, that we're using one-time monies to fund our street maintenance division right now. So that was the direction that staff was given, was to bring the $20, and then during the time of this 6 months before we can actually implement, that we would spend time with the public determining the even greater need for street preservation. So this was the direction that we were actually given.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Yes.
Well, I'll be supporting this issue because we don't have a whole lot of options, and that's the bottom line. I hope that we look into other funding sources for our streets. We look into traffic impact fees and try to reevaluate that and bring that back to the table again and try to get at least the King County portion up to about standard or par with the rest of the county. But this is the initial step. I mean, we need the funding for our streets. We need the funding for our sidewalks. We're woefully behind in some of that. We have a lot of construction going on in this city. We need to catch up. So with that being said, I'll be supporting establishing a transportation benefit district, like I said, because we have no options.
Great, thank you. Deputy Mayor Spivey, and then Councilmember Evans.
Great, thank you. As Councilmember Agnew said, we've lost all of our funding sources that we've used. We don't have many options. And this is establishing a district. We're not setting any fees at this point. So I'm in favor of establishing the district, and we can have conversation about fees when we meet as a TBD. So. I know that car licensing or tabs are very sacred to people, and if you've got more than 1 or 2 cars, it gets to be expensive. as Councilmember Rayum pointed out. So I'll be in favor of supporting the establishing this transportation benefit district, and I look forward to the conversation on how we finance this, this stuff and the funding at a later date. So,
thank you, Councilmember Evans.
We always have an alternative to any of these fee increases or funding. We can cut services in other areas. Can always go back and do that. Not that any of us want to do that, but that's always an option on the table, not one that I would support, at least at this point. But I just want to clarify, I think, what Councilmember Ream asked a little bit. Now, I'm in favor of forming the district, but you're going to come back to us at some point where we would adopt the fee. And I guess I would like to see public input before you come back to us with that at all. Is that the plan, or were you only going to get public input after we adopt the $20 based on an additional sales tax or whatever?
Well, public input would be provided at the council meeting when we bring the ordinance to actually implement. But as far as doing outreach, that would happen after the fact with the way that we've set this up now per the retreat. The $20 is basically, the reason that it was set up this way is because the $20 takes 6 months to implement. Because DOR, you actually have to have this document that we're asking for tonight in place for 6 months before we can move forward. So, and then again, we have to actually get the ordinance to implement whatever fee is the council decides on. So that was the plan that we were given to bring forward, and it is again, even with the $20 and any addition that gets added to that, we're still going to have trouble meeting our needs going forward. So it just seemed like the logical step when we were at the retreat.
Right, but I guess, and Public Works Director, I thought you said that in the spring you would be bringing this back to us. I thought it was the spring now, or we're getting close there. So, and you're just going to bring back the $20 at that point, and then we'll have outreach further on down the road. So if we pass the Transportation Benefit District tonight, then we can implement that $20 at any point, correct? After that, we don't have to wait 6 months to implement the 20s, do we?
Actually, once we let the Department of Revenue know, it's 6 months from that point forward.
Before any fee can be assessed.
Correct.
So it seems like to me, in that 6 month period, we could do some public outreach.
And that is the plan.
But not at a council meeting. But I mean, maybe I didn't understand what the public outreach was going to be. But
so, what I believe the issue is that the TBD board would have to adopt the $20 non-voted, and then 6 months after that adoption. So it's not 6 months after the TBD forms that would go into place. It would be 6 months after that adoption. So the staff proposal is to come back to council in late spring, early summer, to request the implementation of the $20. And as soon as possible, even before that meeting, potentially, staff would start the public engagement process to speak to the fees beyond the $20. Because again, as Tammy mentioned, the $20 is intended to backfill our existing budget needs. And the public engagement process is intended to speak to the community about what the priorities are for pavement preservation and additional street maintenance. And if the decision isn't to go with a higher fee, then we look at reducing levels of service.
Okay, yeah, I understand that $20 is a drop in the bucket to what the real need is, and the ordinance talks to adequately funding improvements or maintenance and things, and $20 doesn't even come close to doing that. So we know that there's more going to be needed, but so you could come back the 1st of June, we could pass the $20, and then that would start the clock of 6 months within that time period before we could come back with an additional issue to increase that.
Yes, that's correct for the 2016 budget period.
Okay, well, whatever, I'd just like to see the public outreach done sooner than later and start that process. And as part of that process, I think it's very important, and I guess my next question is, we do have a system to rate our needs of what are our top priority projects and that type of thing. So I think that would be really important in the public outreach to be able to show a list to the public. Here are our highest priorities. Here, without anything else changing, this is where we would start in this neighborhood or that neighborhood or street or whatever the case may be. And you live here, well, you're on the list down here somewhere or wherever the case may be. I think that's where we need to be as open and clear to the public as we can and define that plan, realizing that things can change that, but they need to know where this money is going specifically and that type of thing. So hopefully that will be part of the discussion and forming the district.
Yes, and that is our intent, Councilman, is to truly engage the community and it be an educational process as well, because it isn't just a matter of where the priority streets are, but it's also what our options are for pavement preservation.
Yeah.
We've historically done a lot of overlay, and there are options that we want to talk to the community about to see if there is an appetite for things like slurry seal and other technologies that haven't been used a lot in this community.
Okay. I guess I'm last on the list. I have a question on Councilmember Rayum. You don't have to answer or not. I thought this is the idea that you came up with, but maybe I'm remembering wrong. I thought this was a passionate thing of yours, so I was surprised to hear you would vote no. Can you explain? Because this is all about the maintenance of the roads.
I didn't say I'd vote no.
Oh, I thought I heard you say you were going to vote
no. I didn't. I said I do support
well, I appreciate
transportation benefit.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I must have misunderstood you. Since this is kind of a taxing issue, I think we'll open it up for another round. Is there more questions that people would have? Nope. Councilmember Sandberg?
Well, I had some comments.
Well, maybe you can lead your comments into a motion.
Okay. So, first of all, I think that going with the strategy of in these series of steps of forming a TBD, then assessing a $20 car tab fee, and then going to the public to ask for more is a questionable strategy. If I'm a taxpayer and I find out that council implemented a $20 car tab fee and then is going to turn around and ask me for more, because we're going to have to ask for more, because the $20 car tab fee doesn't even come close to addressing the needs that are identified in the latest State of the Street study. I think we're going to set ourselves up for failure at the ballot. And so I would like to say that we do have other options than what is before us tonight, approving this TBD tonight. I think that we should precede even the formation of a TBD with a robust public process. We've said that we've lost money, revenue sources. We've said this is how much money we can raise by these different options, but we haven't said to the public, these are specifically what our needs are, and this is what it's going to cost. And I think we need to be very clear about that, because if we approving this TBD tonight just sets the stage for going with the $20 non-voted car tab fee, in my opinion, and I don't think we'll ever be able to get the voters to approve anything more if we use that process. So what I would recommend is that we have that robust staff outreach first, and we consider instead of a card tab fee, or put it as an option, the sales and use tax fee, and it doesn't have to be the full 0.2%. It can be some amount up to a maximum of 0.2%. And I think we have a lot of information that we can take to the public to get their input. We have a TBD ordinance that they should be able to look at and weigh in on. And I'm concerned that, I know that we've talked about how this draft ordinance is very broad. It states that a TBD will fund any and all improvements consistent with state law. And then we've also been told, but you can narrow down that list once you start talking about the revenue options. Well, why can't we be specific in our TBD ordinance? That if the public overwhelmingly tells us one thing, like, for example, we want you to use this money for maintenance of existing roads, why can't we be specific with that language in our own ordinance? And there's numerous places in the ordinance where it talks about adding capacity, and it doesn't even once mention in the ordinance the state of the streets studies that we continually do. And then on page 90, and this is why I think we should precede all of this with an active, robust public process, is on page 90 of our agenda bill. It says, whereas the city provided proper notice, conducted a public hearing, and took public comment. Well, just because it's proper notice doesn't mean that it's a genuine engagement with the community. I want that to be able to say when we approve this, whereas the city provided proper notice, conducted multiple public workshops, conducted public hearings, and received X amount of testimony, we propose the establishment of a transportation benefit district. So that's what I would like to see. I would like to see the public process first, and that feedback come back to us, and then institute the TBD, and then talk about revenue options. And because I think if we do it any differently, we're just going to set ourselves up for failure. And allowing for 3 to 4 months of public process is not going. Our roads are not going to fall off a cliff in the time it takes to do that.
Great, thank you. Other further deliberation? Councilmember Agnew.
I agree with Councilmember Sandberg on a number of points. I disagree with creating a transportation benefit district will automatically give us a $20 license fee increase. I don't think that's the case at all. I think establishing the transportation benefit district is just establishing the transportation benefit district. I do agree that we need to go out to the public and find out what the public thinks about this. And we can do that. And I think we should do that. But I think we need to establish this district first.
Councilmember Ray.
More deliberation. So as a council, we get the state of the roads report on an annual basis, I believe. And, it's something that probably put most people to sleep. But for us, it's, 10 to 20% of the land mass that is in our city's roads. And we are responsible to maintain most of those roads. Some of them are county and state, but the vast majority of the roads are ours to maintain. And what that report has been telling me for the last 3 years is that we are in a very, very bad situation. It's not a matter of, let's build a new city hall to consolidate our staff. There's a cost right now, and if we don't address that, the cost will, is it triple? Well, sorry, I can't ask questions. It'll go up a lot, and it'll go up exponentially at some point. If you get to a certain point when you let your roads deteriorate to a certain point, replacing them becomes much, much more expensive. And so to me, as I've been on this council and been driving around these roads, I have noticed, because I don't do road construction, but I do public works type activities at my job, that I can just see it transpire. What's occurring to our roads right now is we're in a pretty bad situation, and we need to do something about it. And I think forming a transportation benefit district, I hope it gets people's attention, and they do want to chime in about what they want the money to go to. I personally don't want to see it go to capacity building systems. I want to see it maintaining the systems that we have. But I'm just one person. I'd like to know what the rest of the public thought. And, for the most part, I'm sure most people don't care. They just want us to take care of it. But at the end of the day, we need to ask them for more money than we can on our own accord. We have to ask a voter-approved increase to try to catch up with how bad our roads are deteriorating. So that's my deliberation.
Thank you. Other council members? Is there a motion to close public hearing? Councilmember Spivey, Deputy Mayor Spivey.
Great, thank you. I'm going to support this, and I'll even make the motion to close the public hearing. I'll make the motion to approve it. The thing is, we're voting on just the formation. We're not voting on any taxes. Let's keep the focus here. We can't establish anything because we're not a transportation benefit district yet. So we can't establish any taxing or fees or anything else until we form this. There is a little bit sense of urgency in that we form this, and then once we decide on whatever fee or tax that we use, then we have a 6-month window before it can be implemented. And then there's probably a window before they collect any of that and it comes to the city. So we're well into 2016 on our current path. And if we delay making a decision on our fee into 2016, we're going to be possibly collecting in 2017, and we got no money to maintain our roads in 2017. We're working on a 15-16 right now. So there is a sense of urgency. So the sky's not falling yet, I don't think, but I'm going to support forming the transportation benefit district. And that's when I think we're going to have some great discussions on and public outreach on how we fund the preservation of our streets. So that's the part that, to me, this is what's before us tonight is it's just part of the process to get there, and we got to do it. But the big discussion will be after we're formed and we start having the discussion about the options that are up there, because I definitely have some thoughts on that. So if there's nobody else, I would make a motion that wants to speak. I'll move to close the public hearing.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, if everybody could place their vote to close the public hearing. And the clerk display passes unanimously. The floor is back to Deputy Mayor Spivey.
Then I would move the recommended action.
We have a motion by Deputy Mayor Spivey and a second by Councilmember Agnew. Any discussion on the motion?
Speaking to my motion?
Absolutely. And then Councilmember Evans.
I'm obviously in favor. I made the motion. Again, this does nothing as far as any fees or taxes. This just opens the door for us to start having those discussions. And I think as a transportation benefit district, that's when we direct staff to go out. Although I know they're going to do it ahead of time, but we reiterate their our desire for them to go out and do the public outreach. So I think we're going through process right now to get to the bigger discussion.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Evans.
I'm going to support the motion because, and Councilmember Sandberg made some good comments, and I hope what she said doesn't happen. I hope that we don't cut off our nose here with the $20 and we don't ever get any further. So I would request of staff that hopefully the council is going to form the transportation benefit district, but before you even come back to us with the $20, if you could start that public engagement process, I think that's going to make it easier for us. Maybe it won't be $20, I mean, in fact, there's legislation pending right now, I think. I don't know what the status of it is to raise that $20. Maybe by that time we'll know where the legislature's at on that. But so I want to get the process started but I also, with us forming the district, but I also want to get the process started on the public input. And because that is going to be a challenge. We pass multi-million-dollar budgets, we pass comp plans, we pass park development plans, all kinds of things that we ask for public input. And we unfortunately just don't get a lot of public to give us input. And I don't know how many public are going to understand chip seal and slurry seal and all this kind of stuff. It's maybe not a real jazzy subject. So I think we really do need to start that process sooner than later and try to educate the public and get their input. And then we'll guide where we go with it from there.
Great. Thank you. Councilmember Sandberg.
I do recognize the need for us to find additional revenue to deal with our street maintenance. In fact, Councilmember Rayum and I advocated last year to put a measure on the ballot to do just that. And so I'm very supportive of doing what we can to raise the needed revenue for our street preservation. But to me, it is so important to have that public input piece. And that's why I wanted the public input piece to precede this action tonight. So I'll be voting no, but I look forward to the robust public discussion, the schedule of meetings, how you plan to advertise it, to get people engaged in the process. I look forward to all of that and the outcome, what the voters are saying, what our citizens are saying, so that can inform what type of revenue package we try to proceed with. So,
Councilmember Rayum or Agnew? Rayum?
So I'm going to be supporting the motion. I can't remember how I should ask more questions when it was time to ask questions, but I think even at the $100 license fee, that's not enough per year to catch up with our deferred maintenance to keep our index score of, it's more than enough? Like, you can't say. Anyways, so I do support creating the transportation benefit district. I have a lot of concern about raising a $20 license fee without letting the public know what it's going to go towards, and not only that, but that's not enough. Like I would rather us go out once and explain what we need this and how much it is, and not raise it $20 just councilmatically, but to take the time to make sure that the public is well informed and they can vote on it, how much the transportation benefit district is going to charge their car taps.
That's it. No. Everybody's had a chance to speak, so if everybody could place a vote on the underlying motion. And the clerk can display. Passes 5-1 with Councilmember Lamb absent and excused. Thank you so much for that. We are at the hour of 8:39. The Planning Commission and others have been persevering through. We are on to the next agenda bill item, which is 15049, public hearing to consider a Planning Commission recommendation on the 2015 periodic plan and code update. The public hearing is open.
Mayor?
Yes?
Before you open the public hearing, I'd like to make a motion to extend to 9:45. We've allotted about an hour for this item, and so we're not interrupting to extend our meeting. I'd like to get ahead of that and make that motion.
There's a motion and a second on the floor. Any discussion? All in favor, place your vote. And clerk display passes unanimously. Mr. Hassler, the floor is back to you.
Thank you. Good evening, Council.
Good evening.
As the Mayor has already mentioned, this is the 2015 periodic plan and code update. I do have a presentation for you. Before I get started, I'll just say that this has been, as Council knows, about a 14-month process so far. It obviously takes a lot of people to pull something like this together. I'd like to recognize the fact that I think a majority of our Planning Commission, if not all of our Planning Commissioners, are in the room tonight, and thank them for their attendance. We also have a number of staff on hand. The planning staff is here, as well as Steve Morikawa and Chairman Gong from the Public Works Department for the transportation portion of this. And with that, I'll get started. Just some brief background on why we're doing this plan update. The Washington State Growth Management Act requires the periodic updating of local comprehensive plans and development regulations. Our deadline for adoption of an updated plan and implementing regulations is June 30th of this year. And towards the end of my presentation, I'll talk a little bit more about the remainder of the Council's schedule up to June 30th. I know we had a visitor tonight who commented upon that, so I will get into that a little bit and have some recommendations for you. The purpose of the update is to ensure that local plans and regulations comply with all current requirements of the GMA. Council formally initiated the Plan and Code update on February 4th of 2014 and assigned it to the Planning Commission for hearing, deliberation, and recommendation back to Council. The Commission began their review literally the week after Council initiated the update, and to date the Commission has met 43 times. All of those meetings were held as a public hearing, so public testimony was solicited at all 43 dates. In addition, the Landmark Preservation Board held 2 public hearing dates, plus a joint meeting with the Planning Commission. The vision statement, all 13 major plan elements, and all 17 sub-area plans were reviewed by the Commission. And there are revisions to all of those items, some greater in scope and import than others. A couple of the major themes for the update, and Council has heard this before. We came to you before the update started to talk about a couple of these major themes. The first is the accommodation of all allocated population and employment growth. And Council is aware that we have a residential capacity deficit of just under 3,600 persons in the Snohomish County portion of the city. The King County portion has no such deficit for either population or employment. And the Snohomish County portion, we're okay on employment, but we have this deficit for population. The reason for that is the Snohomish County portion of the city contains the Regional Growth Center in the Canyon Park area. The addition of RAC plan designations for Canyon Park and Country Village are the Planning Commission's recommendation for addressing that shortfall. One of the other major themes of this update was to incorporate the transfer of development rights, or TDR, into the land use element. This item goes back a couple of years, if Council recalls. As the Planning Commission went through this item, they spent a number of weeks, in fact a couple of months, just talking about TDR and land use. And we had a consultant who did some pro forma studies for us in the Canyon Park area and downtown area, as well as North Creek. And the conclusion we came to was that in the short time frame of this plan update, that was an exceedingly complex issue that wasn't going to be easily resolved in the time frame of this plan update. So the recommendation that we're bringing forward to you is to include a new goal, policy, and action in the land use element to keep TDR moving forward and to lay the groundwork for a TDR program in the near future, and then further study TDR and consider it as part of an urban design study for the Canyon Park Urban Center in 2016-17. We feel that that's probably the best approach because we can take a lot more time on the Canyon Park Center, which will likely become the major receiving area for TDR should it be implemented at that time. The plan update updates the housing element, particularly the background data and the housing needs assessment. King County came out with new housing data for all of the jurisdictions within East King County and the Arch member jurisdictions, so we've incorporated those, as well as updating the accessory dwelling unit regulations in the code, in the implementing codes. That was an item that Council had initiated in 2014 as part of the docket. The recommendation would eliminate the community services element and incorporate several of its goals, policies, and actions into a renamed housing and human services element. One of the major themes in the plan update was to simplify, and it was felt that that element could be incorporated into other places. Update the transportation element to be consistent with changes to the land use element as well as state requirements. Update the capital facilities element essentially for the same purposes, to be consistent with both the transportation and land use element. And then update all planning area-wide elements and sub-area plans to reflect changed conditions since the last major update in 2004. A lot of the changes that you'll see in the document are to update outdated material and remove outdated material. to consider property-specific requests for amendments to plan designations. We have historically allowed property owners or other parties to come forward and request review of their plan designation during the major periodic updates. That's the appropriate time to do it since we're looking at all of the sub-areas as a whole and the plan as a whole. So, talking about some of those property-specific requests, the first group are city-initiated, and the first ones illustrated here are for the Canyon Park and Country Village amendments to address the population growth targets. There's a pointer on here somewhere. So the first picture shows the Country Village area with the proposed addition for that area. It would add the RAC to the RAC and OP to the CB designation, as well as adding RAC, OP, and CB to a couple of the areas within the Red Barn Village just to the south. The second picture shows the Canyon Park Center, which would add an RAC designation to the existing OP-LI designation.
Gary, can I just interrupt you quick?
Sure.
Sorry.
Just some people may want to understand what RAC means, and
sure,
just brief description of that would be helpful.
RAC is a residential-activity center designation, so it essentially provides for a mixed-use type development that we see, such as we see in the downtown area now. These two areas, neither of them currently have a residential component to their existing designation. So by adding a residential component to that, we can accommodate that population target that we're required to accommodate in the Snohomish County portion of the city. Within the Country Village area, the residential component would be limited to a 35-foot height limit, and within the Canyon Park area to a 65-foot height limit. Other commercial development in Canyon Park could still go up to 100 feet as it's currently allowed. The reason we're proposing 65 feet in Canyon Park for residential is that still would allow some room in the future potentially for providing an additional floor through the TDR program as an incentive to developers. The next city-initiated amendment is for approximately 9.9 acres in the Shelton View Meridian 3rd Avenue Southeast subarea, and this would expand an R8400 zone to address several split zone parcels. So if you can see, here's the existing 8,400 residential area, and these parcels are split by the zone designation, the zone boundary. So the recommendation would expand the 8,400 to include all of those parcels and eliminate that split. The next city-initiated amendment affects approximately 14.5 acres in the Wayneta Simons Norway Hill subarea and would add a planned designation of LI or light industrial to the existing residential 2,800 and office professional designations, and amend implementing codes to permit breweries and distilleries with tasting rooms, brew pubs, and related uses within the area. And that's the area in the dashed red here along East Riverside Drive. The next amendment would affect approximately 3.8 acres in the Queensboro, Brentwood, Crystal Springs subarea to move those parcels into the Canyon Park subarea to recognize the existing character of that area. So over the timeline of since the last major update in 2004, this area has developed, and the character of the parcels is now more akin to Canyon Park than it is to the Queensboro, Brentwood, Crystal Springs neighborhood. So we're recommending just changing the sub-area boundary. It wouldn't change anything else there. And then, similarly, an amendment affecting approximately 7.35 acres in the Shelton View, Meridian, 3rd Avenue Southeast subarea. Again, to move those parcels into the Canyon Park subarea, to recognize both the existing character of the area and to address another split zone parcel situation right there. Moving on to the property-specific requests, which were property owner initiated. Again, the periodic plan updates have historically provided an opportunity for property owners to request review of their plan designation for their property. The Planning Commission accepted such requests through the first meeting of the applicable sub-area plan that they reside in. So we allowed people to make a request prior to the sub-area plan hearing for that sub-area, as well as at the first meeting for that sub-area. We then cut those requests off at the end of that first meeting, simply because logistically it would have been very difficult to provide adequate notice to surrounding property owners had we taken in requests throughout the process. So staff and the Planning Commission agreed that the end of that first hearing was a good time to cut that off. In all, we received 10 such requests, property-specific requests. If you recall, 3 of those were deferred by the Planning Commission due to their scale, complexity, and or controversial nature. Those were the Nike Hill Malik requests up on Nike Hill within the Shelton View sub-area, the Wayne Golf Course, request, and the third one has just completely escaped my memory. Oh, thank you. So we have a request coming up just in a second regarding South Riverside, what we call a South Riverside Drive, what we call a Ferryman request. There was a larger area there that was deferred, and I'll show you that in just a second. And those deferrals were endorsed by Council as part of the 2015 docket deliberations. Within the Country Village, Lake Pleasant, Bothell, Everett Highway sub-area is a request we call the Jorgensen request. And most of these requests obviously are named after the property owners in question. This would amend the plan designation for approximately 0.69 acres located in the Country Village, Lake Pleasant, Bothell, Everett Highway sub-area on 232nd Street from R9600 to R5400 detached. So that's a single-family density of 9600 to 5400D. They would still be detached dwelling units. And that's on the western half of the property to address, again, a split zone issue. So here's the existing Jorgensen property, and this would go from, the western half would go from R9600 to R5400D to be consistent with the Jorgensen property. Within the Brickyard Road, Queensgate sub-area is a request called Hallett. That would amend the plan designation for approximately 1.65 acres located on Woodinville Drive from general commercial to R9600 to address property owner concerns over tax assessments. Essentially, the Halletts own property within the red area here on Woodinville Drive that is surrounded by, with the exception of the freeways and Woodinville Drive itself, surrounded by general commercial. And they've been paying taxes at the general commercial rate, and the properties are all developed as single-family, just for their own single-family purposes. Next is within the Brickyard Road, Queensgate sub-area, as was the previous request. This is the Spatation, Nielsen, and O'Day request. It would amend the plan designation for approximately 2.46 acres located on 124th Avenue. From R5400D, which is about 8 dwelling units per acre, detached, to R5400A, which is attached dwelling units. So there's Northeast 160th Street and 124th Avenue. It's this area in the red, and the property owners contended that the attached dwelling units would permit them more flexibility in actually developing those lots, given the location on that intersection. In the West Hill sub-area, we have the Hughes request. This would amend the plan designation for approximately 4.83 acres located on 88th Avenue Northeast from R9600 to R7200 to match the plan designation of surrounding properties. So you can see the Hughes property. There's 88th Avenue, and it is surrounded by R7200, and it's a notch of R9600 within that. Also in the West Hill sub-area is the Hearst request. This would amend the plan designation for approximately 1.1 acres located east of 88th Avenue and south of Northeast 180th Street from R 9600 to R 7200 to be consistent with parcels to the west. So here's Northeast 180th Street. This is the easement for the power lines, or the tote line. And the area in question is in red, and you can see the R 7200 area to the west. There are several requests within the Wayneta-Simons Norway Hill sub-area. The first is the Gastineau request, or the Eason request, as it's also been referred to. This would amend the plan designation for approximately 0.18 acres on Easton Avenue, east of Easton Avenue, from R 9600 specialized senior housing overlay to R 5400 detached dwelling units, to be consistent with a similar parcel adjacent to and due north of the subject property. So there is the existing parcel, and here's the parcel in question. So it essentially include all of the Gastineau property within the same designation. Within the same sub-area is the South Riverside or Furman request. This is the request that I referred to earlier that was the larger area that was deferred. The Planning Commission does recommend going forward with an amendment just for the two parcels owned by the Furmans, and it's approximately 7.5 acres or 7.42 acres, and the request goes from R 9600 to R 7200. So we have the following dates scheduled for council review: tonight, April 21st, May 5th. I put a question mark after May 19th. I'd heard that there may be some interest amongst council to add that additional date, which we can certainly do. And then June 2nd and June 16th, and we're anticipating or hoping that council will adopt the plan update on June 16th. Again, our deadline is June 30th, and there are some real dangers to not adopting by June 30th. First and foremost, we would immediately become ineligible for certain state funds, such as Public Works Trust funds, as well as other fund monies. And in addition, we would open ourselves up to potential challenge before the Growth Management Hearings Board. So for tonight's hearing, we were anticipating that council would receive the staff presentation, take public testimony, and provide us direction for future meetings. We do have some suggestions as how you might go about that. Given the number of meetings you have, we could focus initially on all of the planning area-wide elements and then sub-area plans. That was the approach that the Planning Commission took. Alternatively, we could hear from you in terms of what your specific concerns are, if you have them and you're able to voice those tonight, and just focus on those specific concerns. We're happy to do it either way, however you feel your time would best be used.
Great.
With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
We'll jump into our direction, but I first want to allow the public to comment on the presentation that we received this evening. I don't have anybody's name on the sign-up sheet, but is there anybody who would like to address council this evening on this matter? Pat's raising his hand. He already had an opportunity to talk about process, but Pat, is there anything you'd like to talk about in regards to certain things on the planning document?
I was hoping you would have your discussion on how you're going to lay this out. I hope this isn't my only opportunity to talk, perhaps. I would assume you'll have multiple chances for people to
as we go forward at the other
process.
Coming meetings. Yep.
Okay. So let me, I haven't completed my review of this document. It's huge. There's probably a lot of comment that I will make in the future. So let's deal with a couple easy ones, well, big ones that maybe staff can get working on. And so the one is in the sub-area plans, there's language in there regarding the grid system, basically, that we're not going to connect neighborhood streets to create a grid. That was a big deal. That was put into every sub-area plan for a purpose. It was a big deal. This happened before my tenure on council, but the community came out in hordes in reaction to the street plan, if you recall. The biggest meeting in city history, they had to change the venue of the council meeting. They moved it to the senior center, and there was 500 people that showed up to voice their concern about the street plan. City council members got unelected at the next election because they had supported the plan. It was a big deal. And the outcome of that was we put specific language not only in the general area of the plan, the area-wide, but we put it in every sub-area. Don't connect the neighborhood streets together to make a grid system because it's going to ruin the character of those neighborhoods. So please, don't take that out. That was a request of the community to do that, and the council responded to that community request. So don't take it back out. The other issue I'd like to talk about is the capacity analysis, that we're not meeting our targets in Snow County. Now, in the past, council had taken the position that we were okay because we exceed our capacity by more in King County, and we were under the belief that, hey, that's okay, we're meeting our targets because we should, as a city, be able to decide where in the city limits we're going to assign our population. Now, I don't know that something has changed or not, or council just changed their mind, but previous councils decided we were on solid ground and we didn't have to address that. I know that in Snow County, there's a lot of cities that are not even close to meeting their targets. Everett is thousands and thousands away, and Linwood and Briar, probably Mill Creek too. But how are they then, if they're required to meet those, how can they just say they're not going to do it? And having served on a lot of the regional boards in the Snohomish County, I know a lot of those council members up there were trying to figure out how they could basically not have to take on that population, which would change the character of their cities, and they didn't think they had the infrastructure to take that population on, so they didn't want to take it on. So I'm not sure that we should jump to the conclusion that we have to do it. I think we want to look at back to where we were before. So, because if we do it, we have to have the infrastructure in place to handle that capacity, right? We should have some strings that go along with it. If we take that capacity, we should get the infrastructure. We should get the road funding that goes along with the capacity.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. Appreciate it. Anybody else from public wish to speak on this? Ma'am? Ms. Agard?
Ann Agard, 16524, 104th Northeast. I've got 3 general comments, and I will look forward to participating further with this in this process. The first one is related to the LOS service, which is not considered on the area along Riverside Drive in the crossing of 102nd as you cross the bridge into Main Street. One of the big issues that came up in our area when some of the rezones, for example, the expansion of the 7200 area, was that it is impossible to get across the Sammamish River on the bridge at 102nd between about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and 6 o'clock, and also hours in the morning, without far exceeding the highway capacity figures in terms of wait time to get through the intersection. And when this was discussed in some detail before the Planning Commission, we found out that there was no study, the city didn't even consider the LOS at this intersection because it just was not one of the LOSs that the city chose to look at. It doesn't have anything to do with reality, it's just the way your traffic is set up. So I believe that you need to find some way to address this issue, this artificial, we will consider certain transportation corridors for LOS capacity analysis, and we will not consider others. And this is a case that came up very strongly in this Norway Hill area. The second thing that came up was the issue of slope analysis and steep, unstable slopes. One of the reasons that the Planning Commission chose to delay the consideration of the wider area on the 7200 along Riverside Drive was because I brought information regarding the unstable slopes and the numerous slides that have occurred on that slope area on Norway Hill, and suggested that King County, as well as there's also was and may well have passed a bill in the legislature to do a major GIS update of the recent slides and the hazardous slopes, either throughout King County in the case of the King County study or throughout the state. So I was pleased that the Planning Commission did consider my recommendation and take this area off, because it was clearly totally unrealistic to look at any kind of building on parts of those slope areas. And not only was it unrealistic to do building on them, but building, even if it wasn't on the slopes, meant that there would be substantial number of people who would be in a situation where they would be subject to a dangerous condition.
Great, ma'am. If you could just take 30 seconds to wrap up your thought.
Okay. And the final comment has to do with the Furman rezone, specifically the 7-point-some acres going from an R9600 to a 7200. The rationale that was given was because his land was constrained by critical areas. This is not a rationale for upzoning to 7200. Mr. Furman can follow the process that has been followed on other large properties along Riverside Drive and use a PUD approach for his 9600 and get almost substantially the same number of housing units.
Great, thank you so much.
I would ask you to not approve the 7200 for Furman, and thank you for following the Planning Commission recommendation to defer the larger 7200.
Great, have a nice night. Anyone else wish to speak from the public? Okay. Moving on, let's jump back in with Gary with process. So you had mentioned the way the Planning Commission attacked this. Would you like to restate that, and then we'll discuss that portion as a council?
Sure. The Commission essentially went through all of the planning area-wide elements as a group first. They went through them essentially one by one because they had time to do that, but they completed all of those. And the rationale for that was because those planning area-wide elements inform and direct the sub-area plans to a large degree. And then secondly, they went through the sub-area plans one by one as a group. And then at the end of the process, we had, I think it was 3 meetings where they did what we called an integrated review. So we'd be happy to take that approach with council. And for example, just looking at a potential schedule, on May 5th, looking at planning area-wide element issues.
Yep.
Perhaps May 19th, looking at sub-area plans. June 2nd, doing an integrated review and any outstanding items. And then June 16th, looking at findings, conclusions, and ordinance. Again, we'd be happy to take any approach council would like to.
It certainly sounds like a good schedule to me. Thank you for putting thought into it. Let's all, if we could limit our comments just to that, so we can have direction. You want to start, Councilmember Raham?
Yeah, I would support breaking it off into pieces so we know what to study instead of trying to study the whole thing at one time. And then knowing which sections we're supposed to be prepared for that meeting would be fantastic.
Great. Any others? Councilmember Evans.
Gary, I was writing this down as you go. So May 5th, area-wide plans we would look at, I think you said.
Correct.
And then June 19th, we'd look at the sub-area requests or various plan requests.
May 19th.
Oh, May 19th, I'm sorry.
Correct.
And then you said the integrated review on June 2nd. And
plus any outstanding items.
Any outstanding items.
The other 2 dates.
With adoption on the 16th.
Correct.
Okay. That, I certainly don't want to, I think that's certainly a schedule to start with. We've got to cover all these areas, so that's a good schedule. I certainly don't want to run the risk of not having this adopted by June 31st. I think that's a huge liability if we don't do that. So I think the adoption by the June 16th is a critical date here.
Great, thank you. Others? Councilmember Sandberg?
Well, I think covering all of the planning area-wide elements in one night and then all of the sub-area plan elements in one night is very ambitious. I don't know how far each of you have gotten into reading the document, but I would say doing half of the planning area-wide elements on the 5th and then the other half on the 19th is ambitious, but at least more realistic. We've scheduled 60 minutes, so we're talking about taking in 60 minutes time all 13 planning area-wide elements and then doing the same the following meeting for 13 when the Planning Commission has done this in 43 meetings. I think that's a little too ambitious. So I would recommend 6 on May 5th, 7 on the 19th of the planning area-wide elements, 6 of the sub-area or half of the sub-area plan, sub-area plans on June 2nd, and then the other half on the 16th, followed by on the 16th with an overview. I mean, it's daunting because there are some major issues in here. I mean, did you say that the Planning Commission took a couple of months just to discuss TDR?
That's correct.
I mean, we could have a long discussion on that. So, I guess I had a follow-on question about what are our basic actions? What do we have to accomplish by June 30th? And that might be a way, if we focus on just our basic actions, that might be a way to get through this review by the deadline.
So you would like more time for discussion, I heard. Good. Councilmember Agnew, how do you feel about the schedule that's been laid out by staff?
I think we can probably compromise a little bit. I like what Councilmember Sandberg's saying. This is a daunting task that we have at our disposal, and I think we can use as much time as we can possibly use. 43 meetings for the Planning Commission to go through this, and we're going to do it in 6? Oh, boy. I truly think that we should probably compromise a little bit.
And then Deputy Mayor.
Great, thank you. I heard 2 people reference the 5th and then to the 19th and then into June, but we have a May 12th meeting also that, if I remember right, we can go to about 10 o'clock that night, and we're only scheduled for an hour and 50 minutes. So there's a day where we can put a lot of time into it. There's a meeting. And I understand this is a big document, and it's a daunting task, and it took the Planning Commission 43 days to go through it, and they gave us a recommendation. That's why we gave it to the Planning Commission, was to have 43 public hearings to vet this out, to hear from the public, and we're going to continue on with our public hearings to see, to hear from them and to take the work that they did. That's why we appoint them, is to do this work and take the good work that they did. I think they, from what I've seen, they've done a wonderful job. Take public comment in our public hearings and just make sure that they didn't miss anything. We're not trying to redo 100% of what they did. That, to me, that's just disrespectful of all the work they did. They did some great work here. So let's go through it, make sure it makes sense. That, hey, everybody's human. They didn't miss something, and we move forward. I think they did a great job. So we're not trying to cram 43 meetings into a month and a half. We're just making sure that it's fitting with our policies and our vision and all. So I thank you guys for all your hard work. I think you did a wonderful job. I think we got May 12th as with a lot of time there to vet a lot of this stuff out. So I'm supportive of kind of a hybrid. We can spill into both area-wide planning and sub-area planning into May 12th to help cover that stuff.
Great, thank you. So what about moving a meeting into May 2nd, moving something up, Gary, from maybe the end, so that if we do have things lagging on, then we could just add that meeting back in June?
Could you run by me?
Deputy Mayor Spivey mentioned that May 12th is somewhat open. Could we basically pull up the agenda, add something to May 12th, take something from the end from June, and then if conversation does find that we need more time, we could just add that June meeting back on?
I would need to ask the city manager whether May 12th would work for the projected agenda.
Okay.
But that sounds like it would work.
Okay, good. It sounds to me that there would be consensus for that. So let's jump into the next matter.
I had a question. How will we notice the public about our schedule of meetings? Like,
So-
are we gonna pick May 5th, 12th, and 19th, and then June 2nd and 16th? Is that what we've decided on? And then can we say those are our scheduled meetings the public can expect to come and talk to?
Yeah, I thought I heard
council on those nights.
that's what we just discussed. Gary actually specifically listed dates, so I asked that we could move up the date to May 12th. That would then move the date up from the May 19th meeting, and then as such bump all those forward. So Gary, is that as you understand it?
Yes, we have already noticed all of the dates that I gave you. Those were the dates that we knew about. So we've noticed those through the city clerk.
And what does that mean? Does that go into a public notice in the paper somewhere, or?
Laura can provide more detail, but yes, it does. Or Joe.
I can jump in for her, and she can nod at me if I say the wrong thing, since she doesn't have a microphone. All those dates are noticed specifically, but the other thing that you do is at the end of each of these meetings, you continue the public hearing. And so at whatever the last meeting is, if we have one of these that's not specifically noticed, you can continue the public hearing, and it will continue to be a public hearing. And it'll be a matter of posting it in our agenda and letting people know, like we do with other public hearings and things that are coming to council. So you don't have a duty to notice that hearing specifically as long as you continue the public hearing.
So can we take an ad in the paper?
Well, in addition, we can notice it in the Imagine Bothell notice, which is our monthly notice of land use items. So now that we know that May 12th will be added, we can add it to the May notice, which hasn't gone out yet.
Excellent. Gary, during this process, do we plan to hear from the Planning Commission? Do any of them wish to speak to us this evening? No? Thank you for your 43 meetings. That is a tremendous commitment to the community, and your work is well noticed. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Mr. Booth?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. So I'm Steve Booth. I chair the Planning Commission. So I think that I would just say that we did spend a lot of time on this document. We heard from the public. We probably spent the first, at least half of those meetings really not discussing the specific parcel requests, but really the citywide elements. So I would encourage you to perhaps designate a significant amount of your time to that before getting to the significant or the specific parcels themselves. So we're here to answer any questions and respond to any comments or questions you might have.
Great. Thank you, Steve. So, Gary, where would we like to go for the rest of this evening, for the next 25 minutes?
I think it would be useful for staff if council members are able to give us a feel for your concerns, for areas that you would like us to be prepared to specifically respond to in future meetings.
Okay.
And that would help us to narrow that large document down to specific issues as much as you're able to do that.
Perfect. So I'll look to my left first. Anyone wish to jump in yet? Councilmember Evans?
I think we had some good questions raised tonight, and certainly I would like to see some kind of a staff response to those questions that have been raised by the public that's here tonight and has spoken. So at some point, you know, in the sub-area plans, the grid street systems, why we remove those. I would be interested in knowing that. And the capacity targets for the Snohomish County. And then Ms. Agard had some specific ones, I think, a couple there, but maybe a one on the slope analysis of how do we need to do more study on the slope analysis, or how do we get to the point that we're okay, or that we're recommending moving forward with action in those areas where there is a slope? What's the basis of our analysis in some of those areas? So at least some of those comments raised tonight were good. I'd like to see staff respond to those.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. So not now, but later?
That's just the start.
Okay. You don't want a response now?
No, go for it.
Oh,
that'd be great.
Sure.
Just on a couple of them. So with regards to the Snohomish County capacity question that I think Mr. Ewing brought up, we asked that exact question several times. And Bill, I don't know if you'd be willing to comment on it now, but I know that we asked that very question. Could some of our excess capacity in King County be used to offset this shortfall that we have in Snohomish? I won't want to speak for Bill, but maybe Bill could respond to that.
Sure. Well, back in the last update, we did have a situation where there was inadequate capacity in Snohomish County and a little excess in King County. We argued at the time that it's all one city. Why can't we just consider the total capacity on both sides of the county line? And actually, that argument did not pass muster with Snohomish County. The target was the target, and so we sort of agreed to disagree back then. And it's even stricter this time around, because since the last update, the Puget Sound Regional Council adopted Vision 2040. And Vision 2040 differed from Vision 2020 in adopting hard targets by counties for the different kinds of growth centers. As Gary mentioned, we are a core city under Vision 2040, and we're a core city because we have a regional growth center in the Snohomish County portion of our city. It's in the Canyon Park area. And so Vision 2040 assigned pretty specific numbers to the highest, well, to the different kinds of growth centers. So at the top is metropolitan cities. So in Snohomish County, that's Everett, and in King County, it's Seattle and Bellevue. The next level is core cities. And in Snohomish County, there are two core cities. There's Everett and there's Bothell, and there are a number of core cities in King County. So the target for core cities was X. And that target had to be divided between two cities, right, Linwood and Bothell. And so we negotiated a target, and PSRC made it pretty clear that there's no negotiation across county lines. The Snohomish County target is the Snohomish County target. So we were able to find a source of that needed capacity in Snohomish County by assigning the RAC designation to the Canyon Park Business Center, which right now doesn't have a residential designation, and the same is true of Country Village. Now, that actually kills a couple of birds with one stone, because for years PSRC has been complaining that we have not done everything we could do to position Canyon Park to be a regional growth center as envisioned in Vision 2040. Obviously, if it's only designated for office, professional, light industrial, then you're not accommodating residential. So it addresses that failing, but it also it happens to provide enough population capacity to meet that shortfall as well.
That do it?
Well, that's the housing target one. Is there someone who can speak to the grid system in reference to
I would ask staff if there's any support on that, because I have to tell you, I don't have a whole lot of recollection. I certainly don't recall directly saying we want to eliminate that language. So if the city council would like to insert that language back in, I just don't think there'd be, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I don't think there'd be a strong opposition to it. It was just not a large discussion items, but I don't know if staff would have anything additional to add to that or not.
I think that proposed amendment came out of the urban design element discussion, but it also then impacted the transportation and other elements in sub areas. And it was a reaction to what's been a sort of problematic issue with implementing the policy, which basically said that adjacent subdivisions should not be connected together, and that has been a problem with processing subdivisions that adjacent to previous subdivisions that were built with streets that were meant to connect to the future one. It created situations where we had to create connections for emergency vehicles, but then barricade them or make them illegal for through traffic to use. So that was the genesis for this, and we can certainly come back to you with some specific examples, some of those plats that proved problematic in applying that for you to see at a future meeting.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Gary. Okay, Bill?
Anything on the slope analysis, that how we, the need there to do additional work on that?
Yeah, as far as the slope request for that particular parcel, my recollection is that we had a very lively discussion about it, that there was a wide variety of viewpoints. We did have strong public input on it. We did consider both the risk from the slope in terms of runoff from the slope and potential risk to housing below. We also were concerned about traffic along Riverside Drive, and that we wanted to have a more thorough analysis done. And so our recommendation was not to move forward with the entire parcel, but on the Furman request specifically of that 7 acres, taking us from R9600 to R7200 was not going to increase the amount of impervious surface one way or the other. We felt that in a development like that, there would be some additional flexibility in terms of lot size, and that actually the additional traffic from it would be added by the change in designation would be negligible. So that was our recommendation, but I'd encourage the City Council to have a lively discussion on it.
Well, and I guess just quickly, just to end on that, I'm sure our building codes of the city speak very clearly to slopes and what you can develop on and what the standards are and those types of things. I don't want anybody to be in a hazardous condition or homes being built on that type of slope. But so I guess in the future, if someone can address how we approach that subject in what the code currently says on our slope analysis, what are we doing now to assure that we don't have a condition that comes forward at some point?
I think that's a terrific point, and we are very well aware of some of the houses along that road in particular have had some real issues in terms of runoff and water in and around their homes. We asked those questions very specifically. And Bruce, I know you're up on kind of how the critical areas ordinance has been refreshed recently. I don't know if you'd like to comment on that now or not?
Good evening, Mayor Everby. Yeah, essentially what it is, the critical area regulations have some very specific provisions about potentially geologically hazardous slope areas. And one of the things that's kind of interesting is that there's a lot of new discussion about how we're going to do these types of analysis based upon some of the things that happened at OSO and some of those other things. So we anticipate that sometime in the future we're going to probably get some new approaches to how our geologically hazardous areas are evaluated. But right now, our primary focus to when we develop upon slopes or any type of a hazard area is to use that analysis. And essentially what the critical area regulations require is that a geotechnical expert provide a report to the city. And that report is based upon the actual on-site conditions. Further, when we do a review of a development proposal, we actually have those peer reviewed. So the city will hire a geotechnical expert of its own to evaluate what that other geotechnical expert has provided. So we actually get a pretty good coverage as far as the actual provisions there. But as we have identified, we do think that there may be some new initiatives coming out of some of these things that are going to happen. But right now, we do have that pretty well addressed within our critical area regulations. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Bruce. Okay, great. Next. All right, so you're probably going to take the balance of our evening, I'd imagine.
You would?
Well, I mean, just because we have 9:45, I don't see other people saying that they would like to speak this evening.
I'm okay to not speak this evening.
Okay, and Tom as well. So, there you go.
Okay, so I'm going to try and keep my comments kind of general. So first of all, regarding the addition of the RAC, the activity center designation to a lot of parcels in the Canyon Park and the Country Village subareas. Well, for one thing, I noticed is that we overplanned for the population capacity. So we needed to meet. We had a deficit of 3,500 persons in Snohomish County, but what we ended up achieving with all of those RAC designations was quite a bit higher than that. And so I guess some conversation about that. And then the location of the RAC, like in the Canyon Park Business Park, I mean, that seems like a great place to put it because I don't think you're going to have a lot of argument. I don't know if residential is really going to locate there, so that I guess that would be an interesting conversation. I think I read somewhere that in at least in one location that adjacent to RAC there is a proposed 100-foot building setback and 30-foot buffer to the adjacent single-family area, and I wanted to know if that setback and buffer applied to all single-family areas that would abut the new RAC zoned areas. And then if the Planning Commission addressed this, I apologize, but have we taken any opportunity to address affordable housing in those new activity centers around Canyon Park and Country Village?
At this time, in order to meet this deadline, we're simply recommending placing the designation onto Canyon Park itself to provide the capacity. We anticipate that in the future, in 16-17, when we do the Canyon Park Urban Center, certainly affordable housing will be part of that discussion.
Well, I think it would be useful to have like an overarching goal to achieve some affordable housing. I think that when we did the downtown revitalization plan, we really missed the opportunity to provide for affordable housing. And I didn't know this, but in the staff report you mentioned that some of the parcels down in the downtown area have achieved 100 units per acre, whereas before I would think the zoning that existed prior to the rezoning, they were looking at maybe residential densities of 20 units per acre. So to go from 20 units to 100 units per acre and not take any opportunity to provide for affordable housing, I think was a really missed opportunity, and I hope we don't make that same we don't miss that same opportunity if we're going to kind of create a master plan for the Canyon Park area. And I'd like to capture that in a overarching policy statement. I had a lot of questions about the inclusion of language regarding the TDR, transfer of development rights. It seems really complicated. Planning Commission acknowledged it was really complicated and wanted to, just put in a placeholder policy and look at it further. I think that we would really shorten our discussion if we remove TDR language and then looked at that at the next comprehensive plan update. And back to the RAC planning changes for the Canyon Park area and Country Village area. I guess if I lived in that area, I might be a little bit concerned about. It looks like we're adding a population of roughly 5,000 in that area. I mean, not adding physically. We're providing for it in a plan designation. And if I lived in that area and I drove 228th on a regular basis or had to sit in that intersection at 228th and 527, I'd be really concerned about this plan to accommodate virtually all of our Snohomish County deficit in that area. And that speaks to the larger point that some of our speakers have brought up earlier, which is this idea of traffic concurrency. I think we have to be very mindful of that because what people experience is that the growth comes and the infrastructure doesn't follow. And so if I lived in the Canyon Park area, I guess I would be really concerned about that. There seemed to be a lot of flexibility in the downtown codes added, and so I guess I would like a little bit more explanation on that. What is the goal of providing all of this additional flexibility and changing what exists in the downtown master plan? I mean, is it to provide more population and employment capacity? Because if that's the case, then we really don't need that in King County.
Do you want people to answer your questions?
Well, I'm just trying to get them all out before the time expires.
Okay.
And then it was also brought up traffic concurrency issues along East Riverside Drive. And I think that also applies to the plan designation request to add breweries as a use within that zone, because we don't want people fighting traffic and never being able to visit the breweries that might locate there. And I guess I don't want to get into anything specific about specific property requests. I think we can have that discussion when the time is appropriate. And then the one last thing that I have, or question I have of council in terms of process, is if we're going to get through this document in the time that we've allotted, do you think it's useful for council members to write out what their if there's a language change, write out what the proposed language change is, and then and the reason for that? Because if we discuss that up here, it could take a really long time.
I think you are absolutely welcome to write out your questions or any changes, and if you have many, it'd be helpful to have it in written form for each one of us here to review. Absolutely.
And are others going to do that too?
They may or may not. It's up to their freedom to do so.
Okay.
Done?
Done.
Well, great. Thank you so much. Del, Councilmember Spivey? Deputy Mayor Spivey?
I just wanted to thank the Planning Commission again for all the heavy lifting. It's much appreciated.
Good. Anyone else? Mr. Stahl? Sure. Okay.
Hi, my name's Mike. I'm one of the planning commissioners. I just wanted to speak to, so we've had these 43 sessions going through digging. Actually, a lot of the questions we've heard tonight have actually come up, and we've dived deep into it. I don't know how you'll condense all 43 into the 6 remaining meetings that you have, but to the extent that you do want to dive very deeply in, one of the things that staff has done that's made it really great to follow along, every one of these sessions, it's public, it's available, and they have these green boxes that provide kind of the director's commentary for why the code changes were made. So in any section that you look at, if you're going through this offline, for example, before the meeting, you can actually go and look at the previous records and see almost play-by-play why, for any of these sections, did a particular wording go this way, what the discussion was. You can actually review and revisit all of that offline before you meet, and then when you actually do come back into session, that may help you have a much more, rather than rehashing 3 months worth of planning commission meetings, you can do it offline and get right to the crux and hopefully have a pretty streamlined session.
Great. Thank you so much, Mike. Councilmember Rayum, and then we're going to go to Bill Weislogo.
Mr. Stahl, where are these green boxes?
Up in the document. In your document.
So within each of the playing area white elements in the comp plan document itself and the sub-area plans, there are note boxes. They're not necessarily green. They're different colors according to planning area white element and sub-area. And those note boxes attempt to document some of the discussion or issues that were raised by either staff or planning commission or public or a combination.
Good, thank you. Thank you. Mr. Weislogo?
I wanted to talk just a little bit more about this whole connectivity issue, because I think several members of the council were not either on the council or on the commission back then. The appeal of the grid system, theoretically, is that it distributes traffic evenly throughout the whole system. In contrast, a system that consists of a lot of cul-de-sacs, it spares the people at the end of the cul-de-sacs, but it really loads up the people right at the intersections. At the meeting that Patrick Ewing referenced, the benefits of the grid system got lost in the concern that grid system means cut-through traffic, and in some cases it does. But the reaction of the public and the council at that time was to say, all right, no more grid system. We want cul-de-sacs everywhere. And so I can say this because I'm about to retire. I think that action went overboard. And it literally has resulted in situations where you have properties, undeveloped properties, butting up to each other, where each property has to have a cul-de-sac rather than connect through. There's no reason for it. Our hearing examiner has even said, why on earth do you have this policy and regulation? It's making for terrible development. So I think we're looking for some compromise language that doesn't go so far as to say everything has to be a cul-de-sac, because that's not really good planning. It's not really good traffic management. But at the same time, doesn't create the setting where you do have cut-through traffic. And I think there's got to be a middle ground somewhere that achieves both goals.
Great, thank you so much, Bill. That gets us to the end of our evening. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.